Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to ordinary meeting of Council 4511. If you could all be upstanding. I wish to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land and show my respects to elders past, present and emerging. We did organise for a local pastor to come today, but because of the last minute change to the meeting dates, he's a late apology, so I'll ask the General Manager to say the council prayer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We thank you, Lord, for the honour of being called by our fellow citizens to this office of honour and trust. Give us grace diligently and honourably, free from private interest or prejudice, to discharge the duties entrusted to us to the common good and as in your sight. Through Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. Councillors, we have an apology from Councillor Crassoy. Could I move Councillor Quinn, seconded Councillor Williams. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Are there any declarations of interest? There being none, I'll move on to the confirmations of ordinary meeting 4510 held 15th of August 2022. Councillor Sanderson.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll move it, but with some amendments and corrections.
Have they been sent through to the staff?
No, they haven't.
No.
They're simple, so I can explain those.
Is there a seconder before we start? Councillor Williams.
In relation to my declaration of interest at the last meeting, it was in relation to property, not road, that's an immediate neighbour of mine. Further on in the minutes, just one that I think something comes up automatically with the package. It consistently gives the wrong initials for councillors where they leave a meeting, as I did for that particular matter. So I don't know whether that can be looked at and corrected. Then there was a procedural motion that I moved at item 4.12. I did not move both of those motions. You asked me whether I would, and I declined to, because in the end I voted against one of them. So the procedural, so what should happen at the bottom of page 12 of the minutes, the wording under proceedings in brief under the item 4.12 should be deleted, because my motion was ordered at the top of the following page 13 that the adoption of the plans of management for Henley open space and Crown Reserves and park and natural areas be dealt with in two separate motions. So that was purely a procedural motion, and then as you can see, it's followed that they have been dealt with separately, and that allowed Councillor Williams and myself to vote against the adoption of the Henley Precinct open space plan of management. I think otherwise it's correct.
Councillors, do we have any issue with that? Those corrections? If not,
no, I agree. It's actually contradictory what's in the minutes otherwise.
Yep. Anyone speaking for or against the minutes? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. I now move to item 2.1, Mayoral Minute. I will read it out with your indulgence. This is Mayoral Minute on the passing of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. We acknowledge and pay our deepest respects to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, a cultural and constitutional giant in the lives of the people of Australia and the Commonwealth. The loss of Her Majesty is far-reaching, and its effects will be felt here and around the world for many weeks to come. For Hunters Hill, we were lucky enough to have her and the late Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, visit our municipality during their first tour to Australia in 1954. As a budding monarch, a mere 8 months after her coronation on the throne of St Edward. The royal tour was a truly exciting time for Hunters Hill. Residents turned up in great numbers to wave and cheer at the open-top motorcade as it glided past Baronia Park on Ryde Roads, something specifically arranged for the people of Hunters Hill by request of the council of the day. It's a cherished moment in the history of our community, and that first tour of Australia was also a momentous time for our country, the first time a reigning monarch had ever visited our shores. 70% of our population at the time turned out to see her during an exhaustive 8-week tour, at the time the largest ever organised in the Commonwealth. As with periods of mourning, there are periods of reflection too. Queen Elizabeth II reigned for 70 years, the longest serving monarch in British and Commonwealth history, and the second longest reigning monarch of a sovereign state in world history. From Churchill to Truss, from Menzies to Albanese, some of the greatest periods of the 21st century have unfolded under her sceptre. It's no surprise that for most of us, Her Majesty is the only reigning monarch that we've ever known. She has been the head of state for more than half of the existence of the Commonwealth of Australia since our federation in 1901. During her life of service to our nation, Queen Elizabeth II earned a reputation for her timeless decency, faithfulness, and served as a steadfast reminder of the continuity of the Westminster tradition. As Prime Minister Anthony Albanese noted, she always accepted the wisdom of the Australian people, a strength not only of hers, but of our current system of government also. Her wisdom and presence provided comfort throughout the years, some more turbulent than others, yet she always endured calmly and with great purpose. It is the grace and the fortitude with which she handled the challenges of her time that we will remember her by. Beyond her royal duties, Her Majesty was a mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother. She doted openly upon her family members. We thank members of the public for their contributions that they've made to our condolence book, to which the Council will add its own letter of condolence following the official period of mourning. These messages will be collated and sent by the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet to Buckingham Palace. The end of this second Elizabethan age is a solemn time, but the respect and fondness of our Queen will always remain. We will not see her like again in our lifetimes. I conclude by noting over the last week we have seen an ancient adage much repeated through modern social media. The Queen is dead, long live the King. Do I have a seconder to the motion? Councillor Prieston. I will ask everyone to be upstanding again to observe a minute's silence. Thank you. Might be seated. Councillors, any other speakers for or against this motion? Councillor Williams.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for this mayoral minute. I think it covers in great detail and depth the importance of Elizabeth II's reign. It was an exemplary and outstanding service to the United Kingdom, the Commonwealth, which we're part of, and the world stage. It's interesting that the year that she arrived here in Hunters Hill is a very special year for me as well, because that was the year I was born. So I've only known her as the monarch and now look forward to a long reign of King Charles III. So I'd just like to thank Elizabeth II for her ongoing contribution to not only the Commonwealth, but also to the world stage.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Quinn.
And Mr. Mayor, I'm just going to mention one very small historical fact. There was a moment in time in 2011 when we had the monarch, the Governor General, the Prime Minister, the Premier of New South Wales, and the Mayor of Hunters Hill, all women. Only in 2011. Was nothing.
Well, it's also worth noting that she is, I believe, the longest serving female head of state in history. Councillors, Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for your excellent mayoral minute, which I endorse fully. Like Councillor Williams, our lifespans are quite similar. I was born 12 days after the coronation of the Queen, so she's the only monarch I have known. It's been an outstanding service. I myself in 1999 voted for the Republican model. It was on at that time, but that in no way diminished my immense respect for the service of Her Royal Highness the Queen Elizabeth II. I mean, we are at council, some of us for 7 years, and we think that service, 70 years for, as Councillor Williams put it, for the United Kingdom, for the Commonwealth of Nations, I think the British Empire as it was known at the start of her reign, and also for the people of the world is just absolutely outstanding.
Thank you, councillor. Any other councillors? Not, I'll move the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is unanimous. Move to item 2.2, Mural Minute for Lynn, Malik. And again, I'll read the Mural Minute. It's with much sadness we recognise the passing of Lynn Malik. Lynn was a long-term member of the Riverglade Bushcare Group, Bushland Management Advisory Committee, formerly the Bushland Management Working Party, and former Sustainability and Biodiversity Advisory Committee, SABAC. She is was highly regarded for her advice to council on bushland matters via these committees. In addition, Lynn took on numerous local bushland projects in various locations over many years, for example, in Riverglade Reserve and later adjoining Huntersville High School. We send our condolences to her family and friends, and she will be remembered by being for her passion about Hunters Hill bushland and a very strong sense of service for her community. She passed away at Greenwich Hospital on the 29th of August 2022. Her memorial service will be held on Tuesday, the 20th of September at 11 a.m. at the Hunters Hill Club. I've got a seconder for that motion, Councillor Sanderson. Any speakers?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Sanderson.
I attended the memorial for Lynn this morning, and it was very interesting. I've only known the Maliches for about 12 years. And because of the life that she lived, that was the case. She picked up friends from all the different stages of her life. The Huntersville Club was basically completely full this morning. And people reflected on Lynn's quite amazing life. One of the things I found quite interesting, the Maliches travelled a lot because Peter, who survives Lynn, had many jobs in his role as civil engineer, both in Australia and around the world. So every time they moved, one of the things that Lynn did with her life was to pick up interest in that area, and she thrived in all the things that she picked up. They eventually moved to Hunters Hill in 1977, although I think they travelled overseas for different stints after that time. Lynn was a great gardener, and I think she took great pleasure in I think it was about 1,400 square metre garden that they had in Alexandra Street at one stage. And I think she was a bit disappointed when they eventually moved to Huntley's Cove. But as one of Lynn's daughters explained today, that opened another new horizon beyond the acting, beyond the art, beyond all the other things that Lynn engaged with. And that was that when she got to Huntley's Cove, I think she was disappointed with the size of the garden. So she looked over the fence and saw the bushland, and that's what inspired her to continue her work as she did for such a long period in bushland. Lynn is certainly an incredibly strong woman. I've had many discussions with her over many issues, and a lot of the time, the discussion should be such you would have to agree to disagree. You would never win, rarely win an argument with Lynn, but an incredibly strong woman, and my condolences go to Peter and their family.
Thank you, councillor. Any other councillors wishing to speak? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is carried unanimously. Councillors, I'll move to item 2.3, which is another Mayoral Minute about Ross McBride. Again, I'll read the report. Ross McBride passed away on 30 August 2022 at Royal North Shore Hospital, aged 85. He had spent the last 7 weeks in and around the North Shore Hospital due to a weakened heart condition. He was born in nearby Five Dock in 1937 and attended Russell Lee Infant School, Drummoyne Primary School and Fort Street Boys High School. He was able to follow his dream of becoming a teacher, doing his training at the Balmain Teachers College. An event that changed his life was being transferred to Moss Vale at the time of radical change in education in the early 1960s. He was chosen to be an art teacher at the new Moss Vale High School because of his ability to draw on the blackboard. Thus, his career as an art teacher commenced. He specialised in ceramics after training at Sturt in Mittagong and later became an advisor in ceramics to the Department of Education, as well as a senior examiner in the HSC in ceramics throughout his years as an art teacher. The family moved to Hunters Hill in January 1968, ready for the new school year. Ross had been appointed as an art teacher for the Hunters Hill High School. He immediately enrolled at the National Art School and the Art Conversion course, where after 4 years of night study, he graduated with a Diploma of Art Education. Later, he returned to study again, graduating with a Bachelor of Art Education. In 1988, Ross was appointed as the principal at Birrong Girls High School until his retirement in 1998. Ross's educational philosophy was to provide the best educational outcomes for his pupils. Here, he was able to impart and share the vision for what education could be within the state high school. Birrong Girls High School became a desired high school for the region and enrolment soared. In November 1990, Ross was the first high school principal to be presented with the Minister for Education Award for Excellence in Teaching. In 1997, he achieved the Certificate of Achievement in the Premier's Public Sector Awards. Ross was invited in 1968 to join the Hunters Hill Art Committee, which was the group responsible for running the Hunters Hill Art Show. Later, he became chairman, working closely with council staff member Annie Goodman. He was very hands-on chairman, working with the work of organising and hanging works for the annual art show, hanging paintings, entertaining the art judges, etc. After 12 years as the chair of the committee, he suggested that the first prize in the show should be made an acquisitive prize. The action resulted in council being the owners of some exemplary fine artworks. His involvement on the committee lasted for 40 years. His energy and enthusiasm abounded as it did in his workplace, another art show, be it in the classroom, the school hall, or the Hunters Hill Town Hall. On retirement, Ross joined the Hunters Hill Probus Club and was president for the year of 2001. He was an activities director for 7 years and was made a life member of the club. Other involvements in the community were in the Vienna Cottage Committee, including work as secretary for 4 years. At the time of his death, he was a committee member of the Hunters Hill Historical Society. Vale Ross McBride, a resident for 55 years of 3 Ernest Street, Hunters Hill, a teacher, an educator, an art judge and a master potter. I've got a seconder for that motion, Councillor Williams. Councillor Williams, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I knew Ross from the late 1980s through his involvement on the Arts Committee. So I've known him for a long time and I do admire his passion and commitment, not only to the community, but his family, pottery, and as an educator. A week or so ago, I attended his funeral in a fairly remote location in Sutton's Forest, in the Tablelands, Southern Tablelands. It was a very bleak and rainy day, and the church was very historic. It was 1879, but it was sitting by itself in a paddock, and the cemetery was a small cemetery was adjacent to it, and the church was packed with people that had travelled a long way, some people, and others, many came down from Sydney for the funeral. It was a very moving service. His family was very involved in various aspects of it. But it really hit home his commitment to community and to education. And he was referred to on many occasions by not only his family, but also his friends and former colleagues, of his passion and commitment to education and the way he changed thinking in the education in public schooling. And we've heard from the Mayoral Minute how he was acknowledged for that. Many people spoke about the way he challenged issues and was very strong-willed in getting points across. He was very well known and honoured for his role as a master potterer. And he had in his home in Ernest Street, his studio, where he was very generous in not only his time in showing people pottery, but also the way he gave pottery to the art exhibition and to people. It was a passion of his which he shared widely in the community. As we've heard, and as we heard with the previous Mayoral Minute about Lynn, commitment to community, a commitment to service, service in the local community was exemplary. Sitting on many committees, contributing strongly to the well-being and fabric of Hunters Hill. So after 55 years, Ross is now passed, but his memory will be maintained.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Sanderson, speak to the motion.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. My acquaintance with Ross McBride goes back even further than Councillor Williams. I was a student at Hunters Hill High School in 1968 when Ross commenced as the art master. In those days, the art facilities at Hunters Hill High School were not that elaborate. Ross had his studio in his own home. I, at that stage, would have been in my third year of high school. My brother started at school soon after. My brother wasn't quite as directed as me. I always wanted to be an engineer. My brother looked around more, so he took an interest in the arts and pottery. The support that Ross McBride gave the students of that age or of that time was absolutely outstanding. I don't know how many hours my brother spent in Ross's studio doing all the work that he did on pottery as an interest. Ross certainly had a passion. He certainly gave a huge amount at every stage of his life. Interesting, I later came across Ross as a fellow member of the Public Transport Traffic Advisory Committee that Councillor Quinn was actually chairing at that time as the then mayor. And that carried on. Ross then became a member of a later version of that committee, which I chaired for a brief time. And Ross spoke with great passion. I can recall a meeting where Ross explained his position on a matter, and he did it so passionately. Another member of the committee commented, "Ross, will you tell us what you really think?" That was the strength of Ross's presentation. He was an outstanding citizen, and he will be deeply missed.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other speakers for? Assume none against. If not, I will put the motion. All those in favour? Against, that is carried. Councillors, that brings us to item 3.1, notice of motion amendment of policy for the disposal of council land.
Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Sanderson.
Could I advise that Councillor Williams and I have decided to withdraw the motion tonight for a number of reasons, but for those who wish to speak on the matter tonight, I believe there are two. I apologise for this withdrawal at this time. Our intention will be to revise and bring it back to a later meeting.
Thank you, Councillor.
So I guess we should be doing the courtesy of asking whether they wish to present tonight or whether they wish to do that.
Councillor Sanderson, you'll be happy to know that both speakers on item 3.1 are also speakers on a later item, so that is fine. That being the case, I just wonder, councillors, whether we might think about moving item 4.2, the Tarban Creek Reserved Enclosed Off-Leash Small Dog Park, and items 4.5, the proposed sale of road reserve, after Councillor Quinn, seconded Councillor Williams. All those in favour? Against? We'll move those items up on the agenda so that we can be courteous to those of you in the audience that are wishing to speak. That being the case, we'll now move to item 4.2, Tarman Creek Reserve Enclosed Off-Leash Small Dog Park. And we have a number of speakers for this report. So I might call on Mr. Martin Call in the room. Thank you, Martin. You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors, for the opportunity to address this meeting tonight. It's a misconception to consider that Tarman Creek Reserve is underused. Utilisation does not depend on the presence of a built environment. Tarman Creek is a true reserve. It's not a sports field. It's not a park. It's predominantly a natural area. Hundreds of people visit the Tarman Creek Reserve every day. People walk or cycle through. Some walk their dogs. Some sit on the slope in the afternoon sun. Some don't even get out of their car, simply parking to enjoy the ambience. The proposed development covers the favoured area for most of these activities. It will destroy forever the quiet, relaxed atmosphere that most of these people seek. A multi-use resource would instantly become a single use. When planning for such a development, the impact of the development on the surrounding residents should have been assessed. The simplest way to understand the mismatch is to contrast the dog park proposal with the Gladesville skate park, as similar levels of noise and traffic are likely to be created. The skate park sits on Victoria Road between Huntley's Point Road and Crown Street. The nearest residential property on the southern side of Victoria Road is 230 metres away. Nearest property on the northern side is only 55 metres away, but protected by brick fencing and significant tree cover. It sits on flat land, shares parking, shelter, tables and a toilet block with other sporting facilities, and contains no gates. Any noise that is generated must first overcome the roar of the 24-hour Victoria Road traffic to even be noticed. By comparison, the proposed small dog park is surrounded by residential properties, the closest of which is just 16 metres away. This is ridiculously close to people's homes, the inhabitants of which have chosen to move to the area for the serenity that is offered by the current configuration. There are no natural noise barriers. The sloping grounds on either side of the creek create a natural amphitheatre where noise is amplified and reverberates around the surrounding properties. Without policing, the period of operation would be 24 hours. Submissions to council have already requested an extension of the time. For these and other reasons detailed in the council reports, I believe that the proposal is completely inappropriate for the location. I strongly support the recommendation contained in the council reports to abandon the current proposal, decline the Crown Land grant and return the funding.
Thank you. We might just see if there's any questions from councillors. If not, thank you.
Thank you.
Martin. Now call on Ashlyn Allen. Welcome, Ashlyn. You've got 3 minutes.
We'll see how we go. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, General Manager and councillors. I decided to speak tonight as I believe it's very important you know how I feel as a resident of Reserve Street, Hunters Hill. I have lived opposite Tarman Creek Reserve for close on 30 years, and I'm fortunate to be able to stand at my front veranda to watch all the goings on in the reserve. Some important things I need to share with you, so hopefully you will not allow this proposal to go ahead. Sorry, I got a cold. For starters, children play in that section of the reserve with billy cart rides, running about and simply having fun, exercise and playing on the rope swing, which I might tell you has been there for years. All the kids know about it and use it often. Also, there is a steep slope in that section of the park, which provides quite a challenge for them to ride their scooters down the incline without falling. They absolutely love it. Secondly, we have a huge liquid amber tree, which is used in summertime by many people to sit under and enjoy the shade and usually stay for quite a time. Some even have a picnic. In wintertime, again, the children have a ball playing around the liquid amber with all the fallen autumn leaves. It looks great and I can hear them laughing and generally having heaps of fun. During the COVID pandemic, when we were not allowed to travel, the reserve was used every single day, with locals having a picnic with wine and food and obeying the appropriate social distancing laws. How amazing to see this beautiful section of the park so constantly used by the residents. And again, I must say, it helped us all get through this awful time. I am forever watching the galahs, the cockatoos and the magpies foraging around in this designated dog park area. Naturally, all that will stop. I cannot imagine this beautiful reserve being ruined by high, obstructive metal fence, dogs barking, many, many more cars parked in such a small street, and the quiet and the beauty taken away. Also, the reserve, especially the proposed gated area, is often used by people stopping in their lunch breaks for a short time to relax and have a sandwich. They would have no idea that this may be taken away from them. I think it's lovely that visitors to Hunters Hill can come and enjoy our unique, unspoiled reserve. Just to finish, I have gone out of my way to talk to small dog owners who use the off-leash dog area in Riverglade Reserve, and not one was a bit interested in enclosed area, especially for small dogs. They seem very happy with a mixture of all dogs, both small and large, enjoying the free space, and the owners like the social interaction and exercise they have there.
Sorry, let's move. Councillor Williams seconded. Councillor Quinn. All those in favour, against, carried. Extension.
Sorry. Along with having toilet facilities and a complete open space. Please believe me when I say this is not the right place to have a gated dog park. Many thanks for listening to me.
Thank you, Ashley. Well, I meant that you, sorry, Ashley, could you just stay at the podium there?
Sure.
So if councillors have any questions. My only question is that you didn't mention Spoonbill, which was my favourite part of Tarban Creek during COVID.
Sorry.
Councillors, no questions of Ashley? If not, thank you.
Thank you.
We now have Mr. Mark Bennett. Welcome back, Mark.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, councillors, General Manager and staff. Firstly, with your leave, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to acknowledge the passing of Her Majesty the Queen and her extraordinary service over many years. She has set an example for all who serve their communities. Thank you. Tonight, I add my support to the recommendation by the reporting officer not to proceed with the Tarban Creek Small Dog Park. We are fortunate to have staff who actively seek out opportunities to develop our community, and we are fortunate when, after receipt of funds, they can acknowledge that the application was not well founded. Briefly, the following issues have led to our opposition to the proposal. The survey result. The survey was not directly related to the location currently proposed. To be clear, it was conducted in Riverglade Reserve. Grant application. The grant application identified a site at the southern end of Tarban Creek Reserve. To be clear, it's not the site currently proposed. Natural beauty. The site is an area of significant natural beauty and an area enjoyed by all Hunters Hill residents as they travel along Gladesville Road to our main shopping area on Victoria Road. This would be spoiled by fences, waste bins, waste bag dispensers, outdoor furniture, paths and signage. Disabled access. The site proposed is steep and at times the lower area is flooded. This is not a suitable site for disabled access. It's a dangerous location. The proposed location is at a very busy intersection, and on a risk matrix, it would attract a likely catastrophic rating, which is an extreme rating. Parked cars, moving cars, speed, dogs, children are an exceptionally dangerous mix and an unacceptable risk. Parking is limited in Reserve Street. Of the 9 homes in Reserve Street, all residents have 2 cars. At least 1 car from each resident is parked on the street, and some residents have more than 2 cars parked on the street. Gladesville Road is not a wide road. It is a preferred route to the Gladesville shopping area, and any parking on this road creates a choke point for vehicles near the intersection with Reserve Street, as the road narrows significantly in this location. Finally, and of perhaps the greatest significance, is the resident opposition. There is considerable opposition to the current proposal. On Saturday, August the 13th, only 3 days after Mr. Mayor's TWT column, 42 people met to express their opposition to the proposal. 2 days later, at a council meeting here, there were numerous speakers against the proposal. Further, the council papers tonight enumerate many concerns by many residents. I strongly support the officer's recommendation not to approve the proposal.
Councillors, move the extension of time. Councillor Williams, seconding Councillor Sanderson. Any, all for? Against? Carried.
And encourage you again to accept the recommendation and bring this matter to a satisfactory conclusion this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Councillors, any questions of Mr. Bennett? If not, thank you. Thanks, Mark. Our last speaker on this item, Mr. Troy Blazen. Welcome, Troy. You've got 3 minutes.
Honourable Speaker, so it won't take that long. Good evening, councillors and everyone. I'm here to raise my objections for the dog park at Tarbin Creek. On the engagement timeline on your website, it states between July and August 2022 that you would commence community engagement with the affected property owners via a letter or an email. I live in Reserve Street and I would be directly affected, and I received no correspondence from council, and I believe council has failed in its duty here. If the council had asked the residents, we would highlight the reasons why the dog park shouldn't be built at Tarbin Creek Reserve. Narrow street, limited parking, turning into Reserve Street off Gladesville Road, coming west. It's a very tight turn, and if you add people and more cars, there's a high risk of an accident. I believe if the council had engaged with the community prior to pursuing the grant, particularly with dog owners, which you have access to on your database, you would have found a better location for this dog park. For example, High Street at Baroni Park. Thank you.
Thanks, Troy. Councillors, got any questions of Troy? If not, thank you, Troy. Councillor Williams.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move the recommendation in the report on page 18.
Moved, Councillor Williams. Is there a seconder? Councillor Sanderson.
Mr. Mayor, can I, with
Councillor Quinn.
approval of the mover and seconder on, in my view, this motion isn't quite explicit enough in terms of the saying that we're not having a small dog park at that location. It's simply saying withdraw the funding, return the funding, and advise the residents that we're doing that. So if I could propose the recommendation be adjusted to say that council endorses the return of the grant fund. Number 2, that council does not proceed with an enclosed small dog park at the proposed location. And then number 3, as is number 2 in the visual.
Councillor Williams, Sanderson, you happy with that amendment?
Yeah.
Yes. That becomes the motion. Councillor Williams.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, residents, for coming here and informing us of your views. It's been a very important process in the local community there, where you've got together and combined your thoughts and put a very complete and impressive case. I agree that it's not the appropriate location for a park of this kind. Council last year, I think it was, the last council resolved to mitigate this sort of tension and concern in the community over its grant applications. It decided to get 8 shovel-ready projects, and by shovel-ready, I mean being thought through, consulted with the community, and a suitable location found, and it being a strategic priority of council. Now, it identified 8 and started on the process of building what's needed to make it a viable project. And then, and only then, would council go and seek grant funding, knowing it had the backing of the community at appropriate location and a fit within the community's, the council's strategic direction. So that didn't work in this case, and I do urge council to get back to that process and make sure that it does have a series of projects that are shovel ready, that can be put to grants, knowing that if we are successful, then we'll be able to proceed in conjunction with the community and make sure that it ticks off the priorities that we're interested in providing for the community. So I thank the community for its input. It's been very informative, and I think, well, I know what's in this motion, and the addition clarification by Councillor Quinn makes it very clear that council is not going to proceed.
Thank you, councillor. Is there any speakers against the motion? For the motion, councillor Bergara.
Yes, I've got 3 points to make. One, in terms of consultation, I understand there was a letterbox drop. So I think that's a bit of a red herring. Was there?
No, we didn't.
Okay, sorry. No interjections from the ordinance, please. Perhaps we can ask through the director.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Bergara. Yes, there was a letterbox drop completed of affected residents surrounding Tarban Creek Reserve. We also emailed a lot of residents as well, and did general notification through our social media, e-news and hard copy newsletters. There was also a lot of word of mouth, and I'm sure many of the residents sitting in the gallery know my name. I've been emailing and keeping in touch with around 50 of them to make sure that they've been aware of the process and also the ability to speak tonight about the council report. So I truly believe that our residents have been contacted and engaged with post receipt of the grant. I just want to specify not prior to receipt of the grant. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. No, I accept that it's post receipt of the grant, but I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think you can get the money, you can form a concept and you can put it to the residents and you can get feedback and you can listen to that feedback, and that's what happens. So I commend council on the consultation. I think it's worked well in this case. That's point one. Point two is the balance. I spoke to a number of residents, Mr. Core, Mr. and Mrs. Ashland and Mr. Mulvaney, and they made quite passionate and respectful submissions. And one thing that really resonated with me, and you would have heard Mrs. Alum speak about it tonight, Ashland, which is that the reserve is a true reserve and it's a place for reflection and quiet. I've quite liked that idea that we've got that place, and it makes a nice balance between what we're going to do at Fig Tree, which will still be a place for reflection, but a little bit more active, being, you know, what's it, Glazeville Road, Pride Road, and near the centre. So I like that concept that we protect Tarban Creek as that quiet place of reflection. And thirdly, and I'd like to speak to the residents here, as I said, I had some really great conversations with people. Thank you, Mr. Mulvaney, Mr. Core and Ashland. But one thing that really disturbed me was the level of venom in the correspondence. Please remember that we are residents, neighbours, mums and dads who give up our time to serve the community. And where you make unsubstantiated suggestions of malfeasance, incompetence and conspiracy, it really undermines the desire of people to do this. So I'd ask for the level of venom to be toned down, and you can make your pleas in a really respectful way, which is just as passionate, but not, but still maintaining the level of respect that we deserve as your neighbours.
Thank you, councillor. Any other speakers for the motion? Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was actually going to congratulate particularly those who spoke tonight and those who spoke at our previous meeting for the very articulate and excellent submissions they've made. The community councillor, I can only support what the community wants. The community said, you know, in terms of the written submissions, 40 people, 40 opposing and 10 for. It's pretty clear what we have to do. It is a spectacularly beautiful park. When this notion came up, I took the liberty of taking my 13-month border collie pup for a walk through there, and it's fine as it is. It doesn't need anything more. Perhaps the only thing we could contemplate is perhaps a bit more seating, perhaps, doing something about those wet areas to make the park a little bit more pleasant. But it is an outstanding park, and I totally agree that the fencing is completely unnecessary. It is in a way naturally fenced by the big pines and the fence along the creek bed, and the fact that it's got limited ways out on the southern end and limited way in on off Augustine Street. So thank you again for all your submissions, and I can only support what you want.
Thank you, councillor. Any other speakers for councillor Priest?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to start by echoing the sentiment that to thank council for its hard work in its proactivity in trying to obtain grants and through the public consultation process. I agree with the recommendation as put forward by Councillor Quinn. I do want to say that I do think that it's in our best interest as a community to embrace the idea of obtaining government grants. It's free money. It's money that we can use towards our facilities to create a better and more inclusive environment for our residents. So obviously this time around, it's been seen to be not the most essential project for our community at this time. And I accept that on behalf of you all, but I think going forward, it would be good to, and as Councillor Vergara mentioned, to kind of be a little bit more embracing of opportunities that might come our way.
Thank you, councillor. Any other speakers? Councillor Quinn.
Or yeah, look, Mr. Mayor, I just want to be quite clear that in what I've proposed as an amendment, it is saying not in that location. So it does leave it open should council at another time choose to proceed with a small dog park, an enclosed small dog park, following appropriate consultation. So we're not saying there's going to be no small dog park. We are saying if this gets passed, that there will be no small dog park in that location.
Thank you, councillor Quinn. I think we can be fairly confident of which way it's going to go. Councillor Williams, would you like right of reply?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to restate the need for council to be proactive and need to be putting on the table shovel-ready projects rather than just grabbing projects as they come around, because quite often they don't meet community expectations. They're not a priority within council's business program, and we end up in this conflict. And I think council could learn from what the decision was in the last council term to have shovel-ready projects that are complete and are focused towards grants. Grants are good. You can spend a lot of time, and in this case, a lot of resources have been spent both in the community and both by council staff to get to this point, which could have been better done from the start. I hear the staff's view that they consulted widely, but I also see a large number of people here and saw a large number of people on site on that Saturday. Something went wrong. The community are understanding and articulate and sometimes very passionate. I have no problem with that. I think people need to speak their mind and be unafraid about what they say, because it does allow the concepts and ideas to be shifted and moulded in a different frame. So I agree with Councillor Quinn that this is certainly not the location for it. I could think of a couple of locations that if it was a priority of council that we could probably explore to get a shovel-ready project. But I think there's many other issues that this council needs to be prioritising and dealing with before we have an enclosed dog park. So I commend the motion.
Thank you, councillor Williams. I think we'll have plenty of good news on the shovel-ready projects front, hopefully. That being the case, there being no other speakers, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is unanimous. Thank you. Those of you that came with that item. We will now move to item 4.5, which 4.5 we voted to move up items 4.2 and 4.5. We have two speakers to this motion. Ms. Heather Armstrong. Good to see you, Heather.
Good evening. I think I better take
You have 3 minutes.
Oh, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, councillors and staff. Thank you very much for the chance to speak to you. I'm concerned about this land being sold. It seems to me that it's pretty much a floodgates issue. The report by Mr. Redman says that the sale of the land to the Barakat family will enhance the value of the property. With all due respect to Mr. Redman, it is not council's job to assist private landowners to enhance the value of their property by acquiring publicly owned land. He, in his report, also fails to recognise that there was once huge tree cover on that front verge there. If you look at the old Google Maps still on Google Maps now, you can see that there were large mature trees on that property. Now, looking at, I think it was the sixth website, you see 2 small stumps and 2 larger trees that had been chopped and regrowth occurred, and now they're dead. It seems pretty clear that nobody wants any trees on that land. Now, this isn't to say that there should not be trees on that land. So it does raise, in my mind, the concern that this particular proposal has come about because of a desire never to have trees on that land. Whereas in fact, this is the kind of land that could very well be a habitat and ecological resource beside a road, beside a hot summer road, which will be shaded and the urban heat island effect reduced by mature trees on that land. It's a long bit of grass verge there, and there's no reason why that land can't be improved with the addition of trees. It's just curious as to me as to why this proposal has been put up, what particular obnoxious feature of this bit of grass raises for the owners. The other aspect of it is that it will increase their lot size if they acquire it, which will then enable them to put in a higher density, a more floor space ratio. It'll lower the floor space ratio by increasing the lot size. That, once again, is not a proper purpose for the sale of publicly owned land to a private owner. I can't see any redeeming feature, basically, for the sale of this land other than $191,000, a short-term financial gain for this council, but that's not enough. It's just not enough to justify the loss of public space. It's a bit of, as I say, a floodgate situation. How many more owners of bits of grass verge beside their land will say, well, look at what happened at 10 Lloyd Avenue. We want to buy that bit of land in front of our place too, so that we can then extend our lot, reduce our floor space ratio, put up a bigger development, et cetera, et cetera. The whole process then becomes a bit of a floodgates and damages the concepts behind our LEP and our DCP. We are not just a garden suburb, we're a bushland suburb, but this is garden here. We're talking about garden, not bushland. But nonetheless, we need to investigate the reasons why.
Councillors, extension to time. Councillor Williams, second to Councillor Sanderson. All those in favour? Against? Carried.
Reasons why this has been put up. Is it simply for the purposes of increasing a future DA size, given the increased lot size, or is it just a particular dislike of trees? Is it a view issue? Is that the reason? Well, that is one of the reasons why one should never sell publicly owned land to increase a private landowner's view, with all due respect to those owners. It's a matter for the council to stand up for our values as an area of land which has enormous value in terms of its tree canopy. It's lost a fair bit of that canopy over the last several years because of the various 1050 rules and so forth, and also just private applications. We don't want to see any more of that. We don't want to encourage people to chop down those trees and then a councillor can give a report saying it's got no habitat or ecological value. It had habitat and ecological value, but it was lost because those trees were chopped. So this should not be rewarded by then selling this land to these private landowners. Not that I'm suggesting that it was their fault. I know not why these trees were all lost, but one should be concerned. And I strongly suggest that if councillors are of this mind, that the application to purchase this land be refused.
Thank you, Mrs. Armstrong. Councillors, any questions of Ms. Armstrong?
Yeah,
Councillor Quinn.
So what would you propose to do with that strip of land, and therefore it'll be council maintained land?
Just plant some trees on it, like we have done around Baronia Park. There's a lovely strip of land up beside Gaza, full of lemon myrtle trees. We've had a lot more trees planted around our area pursuant to a grant of money from the New South Wales government, which is really going to enhance our land values. So contrary to this proposal that is going to enhance the value of this property by acquiring this land and then having no trees on it, in fact, it's the opposite. You plant trees, you increase the land value of a suburb. It's more attractive, it's cooler, it's a nicer place to be. So there's no reason why this land couldn't be planted with council trees, other than the fact that they might be in jeopardy, given the current attitude of that owner, what appears to be the current attitude of that owner. But, you know, with appropriate encouragement and education, we hope that people will come around to the view that there is inherent value in planting trees, which then become mature trees, which will make their whole life more pleasant on those hot summer nights, as well as increasing the land value.
Councillors, any other questions? Councillor Sanderson.
Yes, Ms. Armstrong, as a member of the Bushland Management Advisory Committee since inception, the last term council, and that body's role in the development of council's biodiversity strategy, how do you feel this proposal fits with that? And
Yes.
Are there any other concerns that you have about the proposal that you haven't had time to articulate?
Yes, thank you for reminding me. Of course, we need to consider wildlife corridors. Now, I can't recall whether this is on when Macquarie University students did as a professional training exercise, map wildlife corridors throughout our whole municipality. I'm not sure whether this particular property is within that area, but the more habitat increased value we have, the more likely we have a diverse and biologically sustained bird and habitat population of natural fauna. So it's important to recognise that it's part of the whole municipality, it's part of a transit corridor of the movement of fauna, not just one little isolated property, because this is how councils unfortunately fall down. Each little tiny bit is nibbled away, and in the end, the whole thing falls off the edge. We've lost so much because we've lost little bit by little bit instead of viewing the whole area as a whole and considering the value of that transit of wildlife through appropriately planted vegetation, which enables its movement and sustenance.
Thank you. Councillors, any other questions? Councillor Vergara.
Thank you. Are you aware of any recommendation from the committees you've been on ever in relation to this piece of land?
We discussed not this particular piece of land, no. It hasn't come up at all in our committee. I think you were at the last meeting.
Only years before.
Oh,
How
years
long has
before.
it had no trees?
No, I've never come across this particular, not that I've attended every single meeting, but I've certainly been to a lot of them. No, I'm not really aware of anything in particular about this particular piece of land, but that doesn't mean that it's not still part of this sort of chipping away process of just losing trees, and then we've lost so much that suddenly we've got no birds.
Yeah, it's a bit of a fallacious question, isn't it?
Yeah.
No one's done anything, and
Yeah.
now someone's put a proposal,
Yeah.
and it's a bit difficult. And I suppose if they did then propose to put it a DA, council could stipulate planting of trees and mature trees. So maybe there's a bit of a win.
Yes, they could, and tend to get Mongolian pears, which have no value whatsoever.
We'll do tallow woods.
People don't like eucalypts, but we need to try to make it appropriate planting. If that
Thank
is,
you. Yeah. Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions of Ms Armstrong? No? Thanks, Ms Armstrong. Mr Bob G. OM. You have 3 minutes.
Mr. Mayor and councillors, General Manager, staff. I'm here this evening to speak on behalf of 8 of my near neighbours, all who own homes and who border the cul-de-sac that you see in the illustration that accompanied your agenda notes this evening. And I have to say from the outset that we oppose the sale of the land coloured green in your council notes. It's referred to as a road closure, but for many, many years, it's been a nature strip. It's been a nature strip. It used to have 2 large native trees on that strip, which provided a unique environment for both birds and animals. The trees also provided shade for those cars that are parked in the cul-de-sac in your illustration there in your notes. However, council, in its wisdom, cut the trees down. And all that remains now are stumps. About yay big, 2 big stumps. So we suggest that council defer its decision on this item until it considers the nearby residents' recommendations for this nature strip. The simplest recommendation from the 8 homeowners that I've chatted to. We'd like council to come in and remove the stumps and replace them with 2 advanced native trees. And I thought this was going to happen when they cut the trees down. I thought, good, they'll come back, get rid of the stumps and replant them. If they do this, this will restore the ambience of the cul-de-sac. After all, it's trees that attract people to the village of Hunters Hill. I think you'll all agree that people driving into Hunters Hill always remark about the trees and the shade they provide, etc. Now, its description as a road closure intrigues me, because at present we need all the road space that we can get in that cul-de-sac. With cars parked on either side of the cul-de-sac, we are finding...
Councillors, move for extension of time. Moved Councillor Williams, seconded Councillor Sanderson. All in favour? Against? It's carried.
We're finding that large vehicles, and particularly the waste collection vehicles, often cannot get into the cul-de-sac. They back out and disappear. And on numerous occasions, I personally have had to ring them and say, hey, it's probably midday now, everybody's gone to work. Bring the vehicle back and pick up our bins. So if council designates that as a road, then our second recommendation is let's use that land to widen the road, to widen the neck of the cul-de-sac, and it will widen the width of the cul-de-sac. And being a former mayor myself, I know that the staff at this council would quite easily search out the funds, a grant, to do that job. It wouldn't be a big job, but that's what you should be doing with the land, not selling it and giving it away. That land belongs to the people, belongs to me, belongs to you. Why should we sell it to an individual? What are we going to get for the money? $190,000. We won't see it, I can assure you. It'll disappear, as it often does. Finally, could I ask council why they didn't communicate this sale of the land to the residents? I had no idea. I only found out a couple of days ago. And I had to call a meeting and talk to people in my vicinity, and they all agreed, hey, Bob, can't go down this track. We've got to save that land. We either return it to a nature strip or we keep it, because down the track we'll widen that neck into that cul-de-sac. So, Mr. Mayor, there's been a lack of communication surrounding the sale, and we are not happy. So we, the residents, the owners of the land, if you like, would ask council to defer this and look into and investigate further the 2 recommendations I've proposed tonight. And thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Bob. Could you just stay at the podium there just to see if councillors have any questions of you? Councillor Bagara.
Mr. G?
Yes.
So do you know when the trees were cut down by council?
Yes.
When? Oh,
Well, I'd say they were cut down about a year ago.
September 2021.
It was a good year ago they were cut down. The council came along first of all, and the trees were not looking good. So the council came along and trimmed off parts of the tree in the hope that by trimming them back, by pruning them, they would grow. Well, they did shoot for a little while. Some leaves came out, but they didn't look too healthy. I'm an old nurseryman from way back, and I realised there was a problem with the trees. So eventually council came, they were looking pretty ugly after, and I'm going back 2 or 3 years now. So council came and cut them down to the stump level. And that was when I thought, hello, we're going to get a couple of new trees here. They'll come back and pull these stumps out. It wouldn't be a difficult job to do. There are people who do that. And I thought that was what was going to happen. And that's what we would like to happen, because those trees did provide an environment for all sorts of wildlife there, plus the shade. However, as I said, if council isn't happy to do that, well, let's look at using that land. As after all, apparently it's designated a road. Let's use it and broaden the neck of the cul-de-sac, widen the cul-de-sac, because it is a very narrow one, very difficult for delivery vehicles, delivering furniture and the like, to move in that cul-de-sac. And it's almost impossible for the garbage trucks. I think we've notified them in the last 12 months at least 6 times to come back, please come back. They can't get into it. So we do ask you to reconsider this seriously. And I think we'd prefer the nature strip.
Thank you, Mr. G. Councillors, any other questions? Councillor Quinn.
Yes, if I may, I just want to explore that garbage truck issue a little bit more. So when they come down
Yes.
Each week, are they able to turn around down there, or are they reversing back up Lloyd Avenue?
No, they'll come down to the neck. Now, the problem down there is that people park, and there are no signs. You can park on either side of the road. And so it narrows, and the truck will not sometimes get through the 2 parked vehicles or the 3 or 4 on the bend. And so they've got no option but they do back out up Lloyd Avenue and then able to turn and disappear. That's what happens.
Can I make a comment?
Just Councillor,
Is that,
as a question or a comment?
I just wanted to offer some wisdom in this situation.
Perhaps if you can phrase it into a question, you can. Otherwise, I'll leave that for debate. Councillors, any other questions? Councillor Sanderson.
You've commented or made a couple of recommendations in terms of the use of the land. You also criticised, and I believe correctly, the lack of consultation. What would you see as being appropriate consultation with residents, and how broadly should that go, and what should the exhibition be for such a period when we do have these sort of proposals?
Well, from my experience, I would have sent a note out to the residents. There are not too many of us in Lloyd Avenue. It's those of you who have physically gone down to look at the street, it's not very long, and you can count the houses on it in a couple of hands. I would have had a note delivered to the letterbox or an email, but not everybody is on emails. So certainly some older folk like myself aren't on email, but I would have hand delivered something to them, perhaps a letterbox drop, but I would have notified them. Now, everyone I've spoken to knew nothing about it. What is going on? They're selling our land. We own the land. It's in the hands of council, but the people own the land, and surely they should have a say in what happens to it. And it's been a pleasant sort of a nature strip there for years and years. I've spoken to some elderly folk. They tell me it's always been that way, and the owner of the property has always mown the grass. How long does it take him or her to do it? 5 minutes, no more. It's not a big area. It's not a big area, but it could come in quite handy if we decide, if council decides to do some road works down there, because we've got a road there. You're telling us now it's a road. We all always thought it was a nature strip. So it is designated road. And in the event that we council finds some money and time, maybe we can do some roadworks down there and alleviate the problem that we've currently got with the garbage collectors, particularly.
Councillors, Councillor Sanderson.
Just one thing, you said it's been there forever. Obviously, it hasn't been there forever, but do you have an idea when that deposited plan was put in that created the subdivisions in that area?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Well, there's a deposited plan in which there are about 10 lots down there.
Right.
That must have been created at some time. I can't recall when it was. I presume, latest it would have been 1960s.
Yes.
So, but what I'm trying to establish is how long has that part of Lloyd Avenue and the development around existed?
Well, most of those buildings have been down there since the year dot. And certainly there are 4 townhouses down there. And that was originally a Roman Catholic residence for the nuns of the day. It's since been renovated and done up and so on and so forth. That dates back to the 40s. And most of the buildings down there are of a similar age. They've been renovated, most of them have been renovated, but the problem is around the cul-de-sac, there must be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 car entrances. And everybody's got 2 cars, of course. Some of them, as somebody said here this evening, they park one up on the street and one on their premises. And it's a real parking problem. I don't know whether I've answered your question.
Thank you, Mr. G.
You'll be somebody. Thank you.
Councillors, any other questions? If not, Mr. G, out of curiosity, where were you the mayor of?
Maitland.
Oh, good. Very good.
Maitland City.
Thank you.
Slightly larger in population than others.
Well, you've moved to better places, we think anyway.
Thank you for the opportunity anyway to talk to you.
Most welcome. Our last speaker on this issue is Dr. Alastair Sharp. Dr. Sharp. Probably don't bear repeating the rules. You know them so well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I oppose the sale of this remnant land for several reasons, which not necessarily, they overlap very much with the previous speakers. But the first reason I had prepared to speak about was the lack of consultation. And I see I wasn't the only person to notice that. I don't live there, but I was just astonished to find that there was no mention of consultation in the report containing this motion. Because why would you do something directly outside somebody's house without consulting with them? It just boggles my mind. But I'm also concerned about the way the land has been valued. And I was going to speak about this on the earlier item tonight, because the proposed sale price, as the report says tonight, is the equivalent of $1,270 per square metre. Now, if you look up the Valuer General's, I'm assuming the Valuer General is an honest sort of fellow, and so I looked up his site, and he says that the land here is worth $5,800 a square metre. In other words, you're proposing to sell it for 1/5 of its value. And this is a problem with all sales of remnant land, that somehow council obtains a valuer who gives them a value that is infinitely smaller than the true market value. And of course, when this land is bought by the adjacent property, it has the value of the adjacent properties, and that's $5,800 a square metre. So I think council needs to overhaul the way it values land. I also criticise the idea of justifying the value by comparison with other land that has been, other parcels of land that have been sold recently in Hunters Hill. Rather than any previous sale justifying this one, could it be the council has been consistently undervaluing the land that it's sold? That's what it looks like to me. But finally, I'd like to argue about, well, I suppose I'm agreeing with the previous speaker to say, the idea that the report says this land has no other use for council and saying that it provides no habitat for native animals is clearly absurd, as both previous speakers have said. the online images do show that the land once had more tree cover, and it's a bit ironic to find that council actually cut down the trees there and then forgot to replace them. I'm assuming that we'll now see that rectified. It's certainly not valid to say there is no environmental merit to this when we've heard that it provides part of a corridor.
Moved Councillor Williams, seconded Councillor Sanderson, extension of time. All those in favour? Against? Carried.
Thank you. Most native animals get around, not just birds, but even the furry ones. They don't necessarily stay in one spot, and they get around from one safe place to another one. So the land certainly has environmental merit. There was one final point, a minor one, but if according to the drawing that was shown, if that land was sold, there would still be a footpath with no nature strip at all, not a skerrick of land left over. So I don't think council's made a satisfactory case for selling this land, and I hope you won't. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sharp. Councillors, any questions of Dr. Sharp? If not, question of Dr. Sharp?
No, I'll put an alternate motion.
Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move that all work and negotiations to close, reclassify and sell road reserve in front of 10 Lloyd Avenue, Hunters Hill, cease immediately.
Councillor Sanderson moves. Is there a second to Councillor Williams?
Can I move an amendment to that?
You can suggest an amendment if the mover then disagrees, which I'm guessing he won't. You can add it to the motion.
In light of the presentations here this evening, I'd like to move an amendment that council proceed to replant trees on that parcel.
I'll accept the amendment.
Accepted. That is moved and seconded. Councillor Sanderson and Williams. Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What I'd like to do is table a document, which is a series of photographs, which will help explain my argument. I've made enough copies, so they're quite simple, just simply photographs, no location on them. This, given Councillor Cressel's absence, there's a couple of leave the bench. This will illustrate the points I'm making as I go through. I hope you'll bear with me. There's a fair bit to explain. It is a very complex matter, and I'm disappointed that a lot of this material wasn't in the original report. Firstly, with respect to the images, if you refer to image 1, which is the layout of the deposited plan, the lot that is proposed to be extended is lot 1 in deposited plan 212762, which is made up of 10 lots. Lot 3 is now a strata plan, as was mentioned. The deposited plan bounds 2 heritage items and is in close proximity to another 2. The subdivision pattern is therefore important. The subdivision boundaries are a series of straight lines and tangential curves which set out the streetscape of the northern end of Lloyd Avenue. This should not be, or this should not be disturbed. It should remain as it is. If you refer to image 2 in the images I've handed out, you'll see that what is proposed is that the boundary of number 10 come out to the edge of the footpath. That particular photograph is taken in front of number 8, which is a heritage item. And you will see the result will be you'll have this jagged step in the front boundaries, which to my mind, in an area where you have heritage items, is just completely unacceptable. In trees and bird biodiversity, which has been mentioned by a number of our speakers, if you refer to the images 3 through to 6, you'll see that in the original aerial view of the lot involved, the trees that were referred to, they are quite substantial trees. As I've said here, the road reserve that is proposed to sell has in the recent past had 2 significant trees removed. These trees are apparent from both the 6 maps and Google Earth aerial views. The Google Earth Street View shows the southernmost tree cut down. So if we go on to image 4, you'll see that the tree at the south eastern end of that nature strip, at that point in time, as was mentioned by some of our speakers, it's about 4 metres high and has some regrowth on it, presuming it's been recovering from some kind of stress. You see on the right-hand side of that image, the stump of the tree that has been removed at the other end. What I'm gravely concerned about here is if this land becomes private property, there is no prospect of, or little prospect of those trees being replaced. That's why I agree with Councillor Williams' suggested amendment to the motion that we do put plantings in there. Sorry, what's the track here? Yeah. The other thing about this site, the subject site is well linked by street and garden plantings to the eastern end of, or to the east end of the Ferdinand Street Reserve. So the replacement of the trees to be removed will make an important contribution to extending the biodiversity corridor set out in Council's biodiversity strategy and extending it further down the peninsula. Council should keep this road reserve intact to ensure that replacement trees are planted. The next concern I have is that there are actually public utilities buried within this land that we propose to sell. If you have a look at some of the images between 2 and 4, you'll notice a number of concrete cellcode pits. Between Browns Lane and the northwestern end of Lloyd Avenue, there are 3 telecommunication pits on the southwestern side of Lloyd Avenue and none on the opposite side of the street. The telecommunications pit nearest the turning circle end of the Lloyd Avenue is located in the road reserve proposed to be sold and would appear to distribute telecommunications connections to about 5 buildings, including the one in the strata plan. So that'd be quite a number of properties that we would have communications going through that pit. My understanding is that telecommunications infrastructure that distribute connection to other dwellings should be located in the road reserve and not in private property. It'd be appropriate to check for other services in that strip of land as well. I expect there's probably a water main there, given by the water that's coming up in that area. So I believe that just the location of telecommunications infrastructure should be sufficient to prevent the sale of the land as proposed. Yeah, the other problem I have with this is the valuation. The table in the report is extremely misleading. With respect to properties recently sold by council, the easement in Wandella Avenue was sold in 2016, and it is encumbered by a drainage easement, meaning that the land is of not great value. The land in Mount Morris Street is encumbered by an easement for the Gore Cove to Clyde pipeline. That cannot be built on. Then with respect to this subject land proposed to be sold in Lloyd Avenue, the valuation is only value that at $1,251 per square metre. But it would give rise to a greater development potential than another recent council land sale in Vernon Street, which was valued at $2,000 per square metre. The one in Vernon Street provided virtually no further development potential. It was quite a small area of land, and it Effectively, it was already built on, had little impact on the area, but it's still valued at 2,000. Whereas this particular proposal, there is a huge possibility of further development on this land, given the extra land that would be acquired. That has to be taken account in the valuations. In my view, the valuation of 190,000 is totally inadequate. I base this on comments I've received in a conversation with Paul McBurney, who was a member of the former property committee. Mr. McBurney made the observation that valuation of partial lots is a very specialised field and should be performed by those with expertise in valuing the development potential that additional land adds to the value of the combined lot. Now, clearly, this has not occurred in this instance. By increasing the land area from something in the 700 square metre plus zone to almost 900 square metres, the development potential increases enormously. The other point I'll carry on from what Ms. Armstrong said is that if we start to sell nature strips, there will inevitably be unacceptable impacts on the amenity of our streetscapes. This would set, I believe, an appalling precedent. I've got to say I'm very disappointed with this point. I'm embarrassed that it's come back to council on a second occasion. The things that I have covered should have been considered by the person who wrote the report. They weren't. I think the only fair way to deal with this matter is, as the motion proposes, as to that we do not, we just cease all activity in terms of trying to have the land or close the road reserve, have the land reclassified and sell it. I think the proposal is completely unacceptable.
Thank you, Councillor Sanderson. I just need to clarify certainly one point. For this to have come back to council, you actually voted for this to come back to council in ordinary meeting on the 21st of March 2022. You moved motion by Councillor Quinn, second is Councillor Williams, to defer the item for further consideration regarding the value of the property and to proceed with an independent valuation. Voted for Mayor Zach Miles, Deputy Mayor Elizabeth Crassoy, Councillor Ross Williams, Councillor Jim Sanderson, Councillor Richard Quinn, against Councillor Julia Prieston. So in terms of it coming back to council, you voted in favour of this item coming back to council and for the item to proceed to an independent valuation. So I think that is unfair on the staff to say that you're embarrassed that this has come back, because you voted for this, as did everyone bar Councillor Prieston, for this process to be undertaken.
It's, as I recall at that meeting, I didn't speak on the matter.
You did vote for it, though.
I did, but there was no other options on the table. We're running out of time. I would have spoken otherwise. My preference at that time would have been to.
Councillor, I would caution you on your word of embarrassed that it came back to council. Thank you, Councillor.
Councillor Quinn. Questions, if I may, Mr. Mayor. First of all, the report mentions that an independent valuation was obtained. Can I just get clarification if that independent valuation was obtained by council, not by somebody else or by the applicant?
To the General Manager?
Because I am aware in the first time we did this in February, the applicant did have a valuation. Council did not have a valuation, and that was part of the recommendation. So has the valuation from Valuations New South Wales been sought by council?
That is my understanding, Councillor Quinn.
Right. Okay.
And Mr. Mayor, can I just add that I don't really have any commentary on the paper other than to say I wasn't here in February, and quite clearly I've got an obligation to bring back the will and the request of council. And that was to come back with an independent valuation. That's what the minutes reflect, and that's what we're doing tonight.
Could I ask also through you, Mr. Mayor, the General Manager, who has reviewed that valuation, scrutinised it, if you like, in terms of what came back?
Yeah.
And do we have a panel of valuers that we go to? That, you know,
Mr. General Manager.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. In particular regard to this, it's been reviewed by the property officer, Mr. Redford. Yeah, we don't have a panel as
Okay. Question I have is Dr. Sharp made a comment about there being no pathway. But in my report, it clearly shows that there's going to be a pathway retained. Is that your understanding?
That's my understanding.
No. I'm sorry, I'm going to ask another question.
Councillor Quinn.
So in the report, it refers to those 3 parcels of land sold by council recently.
Yeah.
I assume that those 3 parcels of land were also referred to in the valuation report by Valuations New South Wales. I don't know if they are, because none of us have been privy to the actual valuation that came back. I am aware the one that caught my eye in this report was Mount Morris Street, knowing that the gas pipeline goes right under it and you can't do anything near it. So that would clearly, devalue any valuation. Whereas I'm not aware of anything that sits under this parcel of land, any encumbrances. And therefore, I'd be very interested to know, therefore, what's the commentary about that in the valuation report, because the ones that are quoted here do have encumbrances on them. I also note, as was mentioned at the meeting in February, that is the valuation per square metre is well below the rateable per square metre of that parcel of land. And it's also, you can just simply go on a website like CoreLogic and see what the valuation of the property is, and it is well, truly a long way below the square metre rate of what might be given. However, those valuations are based on improved value of the property. But the other piece that I'm not sure of, and I should have referred to it, the policy that we approved for the sale of council land. I thought it did have a piece in there about some consultation taking place prior to any matter coming to council. So I could be wrong there.
General Manager.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Penn, I guess I'll just probably reiterate what I said before. This is a legacy issue, and there was a request by council to bring this back. That's what we've done. This is not a situation that was brought about post the adoption of the remnant lands or disposal of land policy. So, in all sincerity, all I'm doing is bringing back what council asked us to do, and that is an independent valuation. Nothing more, nothing less.
Councillors, any other questions of the General Manager? Speakers against the item? Councillor
We're
Vergara.
talking about the alternate motion.
The alternate motion, yes.
Yeah. I don't think the 0.1 is reasonable. I think there is probably a middle ground position, and maybe it's not the entire parcel of land. I don't like the image 2, the fact that if you came out there, the bet would have boundaries which were odd. But maybe that part of the land is not. I think there's an alternate where you could get some trees planted, but the front part could go to the residents. So I'm speaking against the motion because I think negotiations should continue, but perhaps in a different form. So it's probably indicating I wouldn't vote for the original recommendation, but I think the alternate motion is not right either.
Yeah. Councillors, any speakers for the motion? Councillor Williams.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I don't accept the point of view given by the General Manager or yourself that this is a fait accompli and council has asked for what I said.
Councillor Williams, I would caution you on using that sort of language. I never said it was a fait accompli, nor did the General Manager. He is acting on the decision that was made by this council and voted on by you. So I would caution you strongly on using that sort of language.
Well, I'll withdraw that, but I also say very strongly to you, Mr. Mayor, that the fact that something is referred back to council doesn't mean that the same substandard report is provided to council. And I believe, and I support Councillor Sanderson's view, it's regrettable that we've got a report here that doesn't cover the basic due diligence that should be done in a matter such as this.
Councillor, again, the general manager and the staff are acting on the recommendation provided to them by us. So I think that you need to be very cautious about putting your point across, but not being critical of the staff who are just doing their job.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I don't see the job being done if you've got a report here that omits all the issues that the residents have raised and that Councillor Sanderson has raised in his address to the motion. If I was in a role like this, I would make sure that I was satisfied with the due diligence before I gave it back to the council. Now, you can say time and time again that council had determined to bring this back to it in its current form. I would suggest that it needed to be better constructed. Having said that, I do note we're back in the same problem again that we constantly go through of putting the cart before the horse. We don't have any strategy or prioritisation of what parcels of land in council's asset register are available or suitable for disposal. And in that process, you would expect the residents to be involved in that. But here we are, having yet again this matter come before council without any, what I believe, process to find out what the residents feel. And we've heard tonight that they feel very strongly that they've been left out of the loop. I also have a very strong principle that public good should not result in private gain. Everything we do in this council should be about making sure the public assets and the process we go through are for the good of the community, not to provide private gain to individuals. We've heard tonight concern about and discussion about valuation. I don't see a valuation report here. Where is it? How can I assess this document or this proposal without knowing what the valuation is? Council asked for a valuation, hasn't got it. Been assessed by a staff member. The other issue is, surely we need to be mindful of the purpose of this land. This land is clearly providing value to the local residents and has in the past and should in the future provide sustainability aspects, biodiversity contributions, and through all the important things of shading and climate change, the proposal to sell the land fails. The issue, I can't understand why we would give away the verge for private use. As is seen in the photographs that Councillor Sanderson provided, there will be an abrupt closure to the verge and only a very narrow footpath, which creates both a problem from an aesthetics point of view, but also from a safety point of view. If you have two residents, people walking dogs or friends or whatever, one would have to go on the road, which I think in a cul-de-sac or a narrow street like that is unacceptable when currently they have the facility to be able to go onto the grass verge. So I think that is a real problem as well. The issue, I think, of the report says that it's below the subdivisional percentage. It's 892 square metres versus what's allowable under 900 square metres. It's 8 square metres short And I think any appeal to that decision would be successful. So again, there's private gain opportunity here, which, as we've heard tonight, there's a lot of public good going to be lost in this process. So I can't support disposal of this land, and I think we've really got to, as a council, restore that verge to what it was formerly used for, which is biodiversity and amenity within the street.
Thank you, councillor. Any other speakers against the motion?
Mr. Mayor, I'll speak against the motion as it is on the screen at the moment. I am open to some resolution of that verge. I think there's a middle ground here somewhere where we can achieve an outcome, because I'm also mindful, and I don't totally agree with Councillor Williams' comment that we cannot use council's assets, public facilities, for any individual's personal gain, because, I mean, ultimately we have to assess our assets, and sometimes there might be opportunities for us to rejig those and move one from here to there for the benefit of this community. We must always do what we do for the benefit of this community. And from time to time, that might mean selling a parcel of land which some individual might gain from, but they're paying for it. So I'm not going to say we're never going to do that by any means. I can't support the motion as it is at the moment, and I would like to see now if we can find some middle ground. I'm very conscious of the issues that have been raised by the residents. I'm particularly concerned about the parking and garbage truck issues, some of those very basic movement issues. As chair of the Movement and Transport Committee, you know, to be hearing that a garbage truck is reversing up a street concerns me greatly because of the safety issues with that. So I think we should be looking at those issues in regard to this parcel of land rather than you know, any other things that might be considered.
Thank you, Councillor Quinn. Any other speakers for the motion? Against? Councillors, I'm in your hands slightly. Councillor Vergara.
I'm not sure, is it foreshadow or move, foreshadow an alternate motion?
Yes.
I've written something quickly. I might read it and then.
Yes, if you could.
Then rip it. So point 1, council commence negotiations with the, I'll read it and then I'll have Absolute to type it. Council commence negotiations with the owner of land adjoining the road reserve adjacent to 10 Lloyd Avenue, Hunters Hill, in relation to the possible sale of part of the road reserve. And 2, council undertake consultation with the residents of 10 Lloyd Avenue, Hunters Hill, should a proposed sale of part of the road reserve be acceptable to the owner of the land adjoining the road reserve.
Thank you, Councillor Vergara. That's a foreshadowed motion. Any other speakers for or against the motion? If not, write a reply. Councillor Sanderson.
Yes, look, I think I've made a lot of valid points. I mean, I'm sorry there were so many to make in such a short time. All I can do at this point in time is reiterate some of my concerns. You know, I think there's agreement that the proposal is wrong in its disturbance to the original subdivision there. I think there's also concern about the loss of trees and their our ability to replace them. I believe it's essential that council maintain land, so it is possible to extend this important biodiversity corridor, because it does have pretty direct linkage with the Ferdinand Street Reserve. It's totally inappropriate to, if we do end up with a solution where we cannot have some of those trees go back in, or in fact, all of those trees go back in. The other one that no one seems to have really taken on board is my concern about a telecommunications line that runs through the edge of that strip of land. My understanding is that something telecommunication infrastructure that supplies more than the residents or more than one resident must be on the road reserve. That excludes that area of land from sale. Now, it's very clear if you look at all the concrete boxes down Lloyd Avenue, they're all on that side. It's pretty clear where the telephone lines run. So that land is excluded from sale. So there are many complications, and I don't think it's going to be fixed up with a simple resolution. And again, I have great concern with the precedent this sets of selling nature strips. What will result will say, oh, well, there's a nature strip sold at 10 Lloyd Avenue, or part of a nature strip sold at 10 Lloyd Avenue. And the result will be that, you know, someone will write, well, why can't I buy my nature strip? That'll give me my 900 square metres and I'll be able to have a dual lock on separate dwellings or whatever. It's an appalling precedent. It's going to spoil our streetscapes. We cannot afford to do this. And I'm quite surprised, really, that the only support I appear to be getting is from Councillor Williams. There are many facets to this. Again, getting back to the valuation. I mean, Paul McBride, Bernie's ideas and mine on land sales and Hunters will be very different. But he did make a very valid point, and that is that if you're going to value this land, it must be valued by someone who has the ability to assess what the development potential is. Because it's not just a matter of applying some sort of averaged out number to the area you're going to sell. And even at that approach, the valuation is absolutely ridiculous in terms of its value being less than a transaction that occurred in Vernon Street, where that transaction added next to nothing to the development potential of that property. To add an extra 150 square metres to a block that's under 800 square metres adds huge development potential. The valuation must take that into account. So I'm extremely disappointed that it would appear that this motion is going to fail. But to me, my view, it's the only really responsible way in which to go.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? Against? That is lost. The foreshadowed motion now becomes the motion. Is there a seconder? Councillor Prieston. Councillor Vergara.
Yeah, my sense is I agree with Councillor Quinn. There are legitimate reasons and basis to sell this type of land. And the report's gone some way to identify that the land is, in some senses, surplus to council requirements. But I also agree that there are some parts of it that don't make sense. So the telecommunications down the side, the neck being tight, and I feel that there's part of that 150 square metres that can be retained. We can address the truck issue. We can plant trees, but we could also relieve council of the surplus land, which is right in front of the house. So the motion really is seeking to achieve a bit of a balanced position between what seems to be two opposing views. And I actually think it's balanced because the wider community benefits from the release of the land with money going to council, but the residents benefit from trees and a potential to widen the street if necessary for garbage trucks. So
thank you, Councillor. Yes. Can I just confirm that the foreshadowed motion, which is now the motion, is correct? The council commenced negotiations with the owner of the land adjoining the road reserve adjacent to 10 Lloyd Avenue, Hunters Hill, in relation to the possible sale of part of the road reserve. And number two, undertake consultation with the residents of Lloyd Avenue, Hunters Hill, should the proposed sale of part of the road reserve be acceptable to the owner of the land adjoining the road reserve. Is that correct?
Yes.
Any speakers against the motion? Councillor Sanderson.
I won't speak about the installation at this point. I would suggest an amendment because there are a number of issues that I've raised that must, I believe, be kept in mind while these negotiations are going on. So what I would suggest in terms of an amendment that make it point 3 during negotiations. Council aim plan to support the plantings of replacement trees and ensure proper provision for road reserve for telecommunications and other infrastructure. And to permit proper make it appropriate access for prams or let's say make the prams or wheelchairs 2 parts.
Is that acceptable? I just council retain or council consider the retention? What? That's very prescriptive as a.
I think council retain land to support the planting of replacement trees and ensure proper provision for road reserve for telecommunications and other infrastructure, appropriate access for prams.
That's an amendment.
Yeah.
Is that acceptable to the mover and seconder?
Just on the prams and wheelchairs, if you look, that might actually require council to
build a footpath.
Yeah. So we're going to lose green space and trees. Yeah. If you could delete that, then I'd be happy with the balance of the motion, the amendment.
Well.
I mean, it's not there now.
Okay. How about we say and consider.
There's issues.
Consider access for prams and wheelchairs, or wheelchairs and prams more correctly.
About garbage trucks.
Well, that's the road. It's not the road reserve.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry.
Councillor
Sorry, we resolved that yet?
It is. Yes, Councillor Quinn.
Now I'm going to.
Seconder happy with that. Sorry, Councillor Quinn. Seconder happy with that amendment or not?
Can I propose an amendment?
You can not accept the amendment and it can be voted on if need be.
I just don't like the word retain land. I think it should be considered by council. So
Councillor Sanderson, would you accept that?
I think we must. Well, I mean, the two things we're talking about are like a mandatory. That is the retention of land for tree replacements and for proper access for infrastructure, because
it's not. Sorry, Councillor Sanderson, that's not. Is that accepted or not accepted?
No, I'm going to reject it. Just because
okay, so we'll have to go into. The motion, the amendment has been moved by Councillor Sanderson. Is there a seconder? Councillor Williams. Councillor Sanderson, would you like to speak to your motion, your amendment?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I think it is absolutely essential that we retain, and it's difficult to draft a perfect amendment under the circumstances, but I believe it is essential that we retain land for replacement trees, because there is no guarantee that we can convince the owner that the tree replacement is a priority. I think for most people it is, particularly the contribution to biodiversity corridors and so on. In terms of the infrastructure that's there, I can be absolutely certain that there is a telephone line runs over to that. My understanding of the law in that area is, well, it's not all that clear, is that where communications infrastructure is there for the benefit of more than one property, that it should be in blood road reserve. It shouldn't be in private property. So that will exclude that area. So the original thing wasn't well thought out. And I think an amendment of this type is absolutely essential. And Councillor Williams has correctly pointed out the difficulty that if the fence would go right on the edge of that footpath and you have parked cars, you might have a situation where, you know, two people with prams coming in either direction, one would have to reverse all the way out of it, as well as the garbage trucks. So no, I think the amendment is essential.
Thank you, Councillor Sanderson. I might also suggest that whilst we own the land, we could go and plant replacement trees there now, if we wanted to. So that's speaker for. Is there a speaker against the amendment? For the amendment? Councillor Williams.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I just am staggered by the process we're going through here. There's a severe conflict of concepts. One is we need to retain that for the benefit of the community and for the benefit of biodiversity. So therefore, you should be retaining as much as humanly possible. If you're going to grow trees there, then you need to keep as much space as possible to ensure the trees survive. To then talk about cutting a slither off this and putting it up for sale just doesn't make sense to me. We're spending an enormous amount of time over something which then becomes a much smaller piece of land for sale than what is currently on offer. There's been no address to the issue of the value, the correct value of it. And so we're going to probably negotiate and spend a lot of staff's time and effort and lawyers' time and effort to end up with a situation where we might have a metre and a half available for the resident to purchase, if that's what is decided. And the value of that to them is minuscule. The value in terms of monetary gain for the sort of purposes that Councillor Quinn's talking about of improving community is not sufficient to justify the time and expense. At the same time, it's removing the amenity from the residents. To me, this whole process is verging on farcical, that we either retain it for its biodiversity value, for its community value, or we don't. To me, chipping around the edge is going to solve nobody's outcome. And I just don't know where this application originally came from, who facilitated it.
Thank you, Councillor. Any speakers against the motion? For the amendment? Against the amendment?
Sorry, was that on for or against?
That was for the amendment. Yep. Against the amendment?
So, Mr. Mayor, just to be clear, so we're now just voting.
We're just voting.
Caps.
Yes.
Like in bold caps.
Yes.
Okay.
Councillor Sanderson, do you require a right of reply?
There was one point I was going to make, it's lost for now, so I'll pass that opportunity.
Okay. All those in favour of adopting the amendment? Against? That is carried. The foreshadowed motion, now the motion is now amended. Councillor Quinn.
Now, Mr Mayor, I'm going to really throw a spanner in the works because the one piece that's missing here, I believe, is since this whole thing started, and the General Manager rightly points out, this is a legacy issue. When he was not General Manager, it was under the previous acting General Manager when we didn't have a policy. Now, since this first was proposed in February, we now have a policy in place. But I'm not seeing anything in the motion that is saying we have to now go back to our policy and see if what we're doing here is going to comply with the policy framework. Hence, I'm going to move an amendment, and this is right at the start of it, that any consideration to close, reclassify, and or sell any part of the road reserve in front of 10 Lloyd Avenue be subject to council's adopted policy for disposal of public land.
Sorry, Councillor Quinn, can I just ask if the mover and seconder are happy with that to be included in the motion?
I am happy, but not subject to, in compliance with.
In compliance, so fine with it. Fine with that.
Seconder, yep, happy with that to become point one.
Okay, now the reason I'm saying that, Mr Mayor.
Sorry,
is,
Councillor Quinn, can we just make sure that we get this absolutely correct for the purposes of the minutes?
Okay.
Can we just share that screen when you get that's becoming point one. No, that'll become point one. Oh, yes.
Okay, so do you want me to read it again?
If you could.
Okay. That any consideration to close, comma, reclassify, and or sell any part of the road reserve in front of 10 Lloyd Avenue be in compliance with council's adopted what I think it's the exact name of the policy. I think it's policy for disposal of land, or whatever the formal name of the policy is. Now, if we've got that,
yes.
So we just note there. I don't think we call it remnant lands policy, but
disposal of remnant lands, I believe.
Now, if we apply the principles in that policy, then I think a lot of these other issues that obliges council to consider the parking, to consider the garbage truck, to consider the land for corridors, for tree corridors, all of that stuff. Doesn't do it. Well, now it does. Okay, so I think we need to go back. I stress again, the General Manager and staff have done what council asked them to do at the meeting in February. But a couple of other things have happened since then in terms of adopting a policy, which now supersedes, I guess, what that resolution was in February this year.
Thank you, Councillor Quinn. Any other speakers for the motion?
Thanks.
Councillor Prieston.
I agree, and I think I was just a bit uncertain about Councillor Sanderson's previous amendment because it was very specific to a couple of considerations, whereas I think this has the potential to capture a lot more in line with the policy. Can I add? I think it's okay as it is, but yeah, I'm in favour of the amendment.
Thank God. Any other speakers against the motion? Councillor Williams.
No, Mr Mayor, I've got a question through you to the General Manager.
Yes.
Could the General Manager please advise how much the process to date has cost council in terms of staff time and in terms of legal advice? And what is his projection to go through this negotiation process for the costs involved in staff time and other associated legal costs, etc.
Mr. General Manager, I'm not sure that the General Manager will be able to calculate staff time tonight, but I'm sure he can take that on notice. Mr. General Manager.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Williams, I could not on the spot calculate staff time, but I'm happy to take that question on notice and come back to you about that. In regards to what my projection would be with regards to legal costs, I would envisage that it would be quite low. But again, like any due process and due diligence and the appropriate way to do it, I would get a fee estimate before I would engage anybody.
Thank you, General Manager. Any other speakers for the motion? Question, Councillor Priest.
Yeah, can I just ask, do we need to have it in this amendment potentially to afford the councillors the opportunity to review the independent valuation that was provided?
I think that we can probably deal with that in committee of the whole. But yes, the sensitive documents of that nature will be dealt with in committee of the whole. Councillors, any speakers against the motion?
Have we still got an amendment, Mr. Mayor?
No, the amendment's been adopted by the mover and seconder.
Will that be reflected up there?
So we can just make that amendment part 1 and then the rest of the motion flows from 2 onwards. That's we'll move number 2 to number 1 and number 1 to number 2. Sorry. Have it on screen. Councillors, are we clear on what is the motion? Any? Yes?
I'd speak against it.
You're speaking against the motion. Councillor Williams.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. As I've said, we're wasting an enormous amount of time on this issue, and I suspect that we're going to spend quite a bit of council's resources, including consultants and legal advice, to really get to nowhere. As I said before, it's very clear in my mind that either we have the purpose of this road reserve for biodiversity, amenity for residents and safety and provision of utilities, or as been proposed, we go down a path of selling off a sliver of the land for an unknown value, and as I say, at some cost to staff's resources. We have more priorities at hand in this council than chasing rabbits down holes. This issue has been debated, considered, and to my mind, there's no practical gain in moving forward. It should be dropped.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Any other speakers for? Councillor Quinn.
I'll speak for the motion because we have a resolution from February this year, which the General Manager and staff have rightly brought back to council. And I commend them for doing that. And I don't think we should be, hitting the council staff over the head for doing what this council told them to do back in February this year. What's happened is something has now superseded that with the adoption of a policy. Hence, I'm going back to what we decided in February this year, where there was some openness. There was some openness to the possible sale of this land, subject to the valuation and so on. We now continue to do that, subject to our policy, and also taking into account the issues that have been raised by residents. And those issues are not just a biodiversity corridor, they're about garbage trucks reversing. They're about parking on the street and the width of the road. So this is actually a lot more complex than just selling that strip of land to a neighbour. There are so many balls in the air with this particular issue that need to be looked at if we're going to proceed. If we don't proceed with the sale of the land, council has to do something with it to resolve some of these issues that the residents have brought to our attention. So I think we need to look at that stuff before anything else is going to proceed.
Thank you, councillor Quinn. Any other speakers against? Councillor Sanderson, I believe you've already spoken against.
No, it was the amendment, not the motion.
You spoke against the original. Oh, no, maybe you didn't. Okay,
Wasn't,
Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, with the greatest respect to Councillor Quinn, I don't believe we are giving the residents what they want. I believe what the residents want is no change, and that seems perfectly reasonable to me. We have a subdivision there that it would seem was established something like in the 1940s. It's close to heritage items. It's extremely pleasant environment, and here we are proposing to sell off chunks of land to, or keeping in the possibility of selling off chunks of land. It's going to give it some sort of jagged front boundary that's completely odds with the existing streetscape and sets an appalling precedent. No, I'm sorry, I can't support this motion.
Thank you, councillor Sanderson. Any other speakers for the motion? If not, right of reply, councillor Vergara.
I think this is a sensible motion, as councillor Quinn has said. The purpose of the motion that, as I put forward, was to consider giving the residents the two changes that they actually asked for, which was either trees or wider road. So hearing the residents' concerns tonight, the motion is addressed to looking at those two things. And I appreciate councillor Quinn's motion to say that those two things should be done in line with the policy which we've now passed. So I think the motion is appropriate.
Thank you, councillor Vergara. That being the end of debate, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Move now to, and thank you residents for your attendance. I now move back to item 4.1, Main Road Streetlight LED Replacement Program on page 10 of the business paper. Councillors, do I have a mover? Moved Councillor Williams, seconded Councillor Sanderson. Any discussion? Councillor Williams.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. The Sustainability Advisory Committee has been working through some concepts and ideas, and LED street lighting is one that has been mentioned. And I think it's important that we maintain and continue the process of updating our street lighting from a sustainability point of view, and there is ultimately very significant cost savings for council as a result of doing that. So I commend this recommendation to receive a note, and the council will accept the proposal for the very sort of rated replacement.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Any other speakers? If not, yes, Councillor Sanderson.
Yes, look, I'm very
almost missed it.
No, I was going to get in there. No, I'm very supportive of this motion. I mean, if anything should have happened sooner, it's great that we're getting down to the point where we're only about 5% of our lighting that will no longer be all some technology up in LED. So I'm very glad that.
Thank you, councillor. Any other speakers for the motion? Against? If not, right reply. No. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Move on to item 4.3, Bronia Park Sports and Community Facility Licence Agreement. We've got a mover. Move Councillor Vergara, seconded. Councillor Prieston. Any speakers? Councillor Vergara, would you like to speak to the motion?
I just say that on the basis that the licence agreement has been prepared by external solicitors, that it accurately reflects what has been a long process which predates the forming of this council, then I move the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Vergara. Any speakers against the motion?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Councillor Williams.
My reading of the documentation doesn't assign any lease fee for the license agreement, even if it's nominal. I think a document like this should be identifying that a lease fee would normally exist, and if it does, how it's been discounted. Is there a section I've missed? I've read through it really carefully.
Mr. General Manager. I heard 4.1, but
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the question, Councillor Williams. So that's a good question. So my response would be, again, respectfully, a lot of these discussions had taken place with the Huntersville Rugby Club and other tenants or proposed tenants prior to me arriving, and I hope you appreciate that. In light of the significant financial contribution payable by the club to council, if and when this is adopted in regards to the tender process, as a contribution towards the cost of constructing that facility, the only lease fee payable by the club will be the fees for lighting and the use of the playing fields as determined under our fees and charges. That's clearly stipulated in the document.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. Councillors, Councillor Sanderson, speaking against.
No, I again have a question just further to Councillor Williams.
Through the chair.
Mr. Mayor. I have a question there. Do we understand what the rugby club's contribution will be? And who was the 1.3 million grant made to? Was that to the rugby club or to council?
General Manager.
Yeah, I might actually, with regards to that last question, I'll hand it over to the director here because she has been heavily involved in the Troy part. Is that what we call it?
Yes. Yes, so it names both of us as the and hence in its name, tripart. It's three parties. I beg your pardon, sorry. So yes, so all three of us are named in there, and there's different levels where it's identified, but the recipient is also the Bromia, the football club.
Right. Sorry, the third party is then the rugby club council and
State government.
The government, that's.
And
So,
the government are giving us.
the government who's giving
Oh, I
us the
see,
money,
right,
the
okay.
department,
Yeah, okay.
is giving us the money, council and.
Under the multi-sport.
Councillors, any other questions?
another question, if I could. Has any consideration been given? Because I mean, at the original proposal, my understanding the rugby club was to raise about 1.5 million, and it seems to be quite a way short of that, which is being effectively made up for by this grant. And you're still going to be left with both the upkeep and depreciation on this facility. Has any consideration given the rugby club respectfully, as much as I want them to get into the facility, have not met their obligation? Do we have some ability to get it perhaps because they haven't raised that full amount of funds, get a better contribution so that we are not disadvantaged by both the depreciation and the upkeep of the building?
Mr. General Manager.
Thanks for the question, Councillor Sanderson. Now, my apologies, but I'm actually going to start with a pun. The goalposts have moved. So when this was first discussed, obviously long before I got here, the requirement of the rugby club to raise 1.5, there was nothing on the horizon in regards to possibilities of 1.3 through the multi-sport grant. For tonight, this is to deal with the licence, but in the spirit of transparency, at the appropriate time, when we get the tenders in, which are currently out in the market, sure, we have updated QS reports, but you don't know what you don't know until you get responses to the tender. So at that point in time, that's when we will have clear visibility about what is the cost, and we can do an accurate assessment then and come back to you in complete transparency with those numbers at that time. But at the moment, I can't answer that because I actually don't know what the response to the tender is. I hope that answers your question, because otherwise I'm actually giving you information that I don't know the facts, because we are waiting for the tender process to run its course.
Councillor Williams.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, question through you to the General Manager. He has mentioned before, and I just heard it again there, the council was to do a quantity survey. What is the result of that quantity survey?
Yes, Mr. Councillor Williams, it is in order of.
I would just ruminate for a moment there whether or not, given we are out to tender at the moment, that figure would be able to be relayed unless we go into committee of the whole.
Well, Mr. Mayor, at this point, how can we make a decision on a license agreement that is premised on the club contributing 1.5 million? If at the end of the day, the 1.3 million from the government reduces that to $200,000, and we're giving away this enormous concession based on $200,000. But we have had discussions here previously, and I think the general manager would acknowledge that because of inflation, because of building materials, etc., the project has escalated significantly beyond the $3 million. And I thought the quantitative survey was going to give us some insight to where that's going. We know we've got an extra $1.3 million. So what is the residual that the club has to provide that would justify them being able to get this enormous concession in terms of not paying any rent?
Sorry, Councillor, I reiterate, we are out to tender at the moment, and those figures are highly commercial in confidence. So I would suggest that if you do want to raise that, we would have to go into committee of the whole.
Can I answer the question?
Sorry, Mr. General Manager.
Mr. Mayor. So Councillor Williams, just to reiterate what the Mayor said, while we're in a tender process, it would be inappropriate for me to disclose in an open council meeting, because that then gives theoretically disclosure to people who are tendering for that job. So I would not disclose what that figure is in an open council meeting. What I am happy to say is that yes, you're exactly right. From the original estimates of the QS going back well before my time, pragmatically that QS is higher, and that would be understandable given the rising cost of materials and challenges with supply chain.
Councillor Sanderson.
Yeah, a further question relating to this agreement itself is I'm not sure what the urgency is, but actually it's not coming into effect until, as I recall, I may be wrong, but until the 1st of April next year. Can't we leave this information about where the costs are going to fall in terms of the construction of the sports and community facility?
Mr. General Manager.
Well, it's a license agreement. It's not, we're not determining the funding today. And we're also obligated to go into public exhibition.
That through you, Mr. Mayor, that's understood.
Mm.
But what I'm asking about is the urgency of the license agreement, and couldn't we be perhaps deferring that until such time as we understand how much what the costs are going
Councillor,
for, what the rugby club's going to contribute, and
Councillor Sanderson, can I suggest that when something has to go in for ministerial approval this side of Christmas, and then there is a caretaker period on the other side of Christmas, for a deadline date of April, we're almost cutting it thin. We're going to be entering a Christmas period after this public exhibition on a downhill run, and then we're going to be going into a caretaker period ahead of an election cycle. So I'm not quite sure that the timing. I think the timing could be an issue, quite frankly, because these things tend to move slowly once they go into state government.
Mr. Mayor, can I
Mr. General Manager.
Also, Councillor Sanderson, also need to point out that in the tender documentation, which we've been very thorough, that the tender documents clearly state that we're under no obligation to award a tender. So if the prices come in significantly higher, there's no obligation for us to award that tender. But we don't know what we don't know.
Councillor Williams.
Mr. Mayor, is there a motion on the table?
Yeah, moved Councillor Vergara, seconded Councillor Prieston.
Can I foreshadow a motion?
Yes.
The council defer the decision on the licence agreement until council can establish the true contribution of the rugby club to this agreement, to this facility, so that we can appropriately apportion.
Councillor, you'll have to slow down slightly so that they can get the foreshadowed motion on the business paper. I'm looking forward to the day when I'm not looking at this tiny little screen in front of me. Councillor Williams, your proposed foreshadowed motion.
It's not an amendment, it's a foreshadowed motion. If this motion is defeated, council defer the licence agreement until it has appropriate valuations on the contribution the rugby club is to make to the project. So as the licence fee take into account the value of the club's contribution to the development.
Thank you, Councillor. That is the shadow motion. Councillors, any speakers for the motion on the table? Against? Councillor Williams.
Yeah, the shadow motion. Yeah, as I said, the license agreement is fine, but to put a license agreement on the table without knowing who the licensee, what their contribution, which is underpinning the decision on the license fee, is, I think is not appropriate at this stage. I don't see not having the license agreement on the table until we know the true costs and true contributions should be an issue. I think it's good governance to make sure that you understand the parameters of which you're entering into a license agreement on.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor
A question,
Quinn.
if I may, Mr Mayor. So I noticed there in the motion it's saying we've got a community consultation and bloody blah. So is this coming back to council after that consultation period for endorsement? Or are we just sending it through to the minister? I mean, it says we're sending submissions to the minister, but if we're going to, normally when we do a public consultation or a public exhibition period on any sort of process document, after that public period it comes back to council for adoption based on what the public consultation period enlightens us about. So I'm just a little unsure about what the process is.
Mr. General Manager.
So thank you, Mr Mayor. So Councillor Quinn, expecting that question, the lawyer has provided me with information that says the following: if there are objections to the license, the objections were referred to the Minister for Local Government for consideration prior to the Minister making a determination on whether council can grant the licence.
Not council's decision, it's the minister's decision. Correct. Just on Crown there.
Councillors, any other speakers for?
Ask a question.
Yes.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor, to the General Manager. I'm struggling to see the nexus between contribution of the rugby club to the licence fee, which will be calculated in accordance to 4.1.
Mr. General
Am I
Manager.
missing something? Can you explain?
I would have to agree with you, Councillor.
So the licensee will be charged in accordance with the licensor's annually website published rates, et cetera. And the licensee must at its own cost use the premises for the permitted purpose, et cetera.
Mr. General Manager.
I'm struggling to, I just wondered if you could shed light on the foreshadowed motion.
Well, first of all, okay, let me read the foreshadowed motion again, please. So it is clearly stated in the proposed licence what they need to pay, right? That is for lighting, right? As I've stipulated before. Regardless of what the number is, they have to make a significant capital contribution for this to be built. And rightly or wrongly at this stage, council has not made any contribution or proposed any contribution to build that facility.
That is completely separate to the payment of the licence fee, correct?
I understand that. You're 100% correct. So all I can do is deal with the question around what is payable under the licence agreement in regards to fees. And as it's stipulated, in light of the contribution, all we are asking to do is that they pay the fees applicable to the lighting and the use of the playing fields. And that's essentially what they do now.
Councillor Williams.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the General Manager. The General Manager made reference to their contribution as being an important part of this licence agreement, and the reason that there is no licence fee except for auxiliary things of lighting and use of the field. It doesn't address the issue of use of the building. So you're saying there's a significant contribution. Can you tell me how much money they will be contributing? So
Councillor Williams.
Basis of the licence agreement.
Section C of the licence agreement, the agreement for licence should include, and it's stipulated. So just remember, there's not just $1.3 million here. There was also the original $1 million and the $500,000 in contribution from the federal government. Let's not lose sight of that. So we cannot get fixated just on this 1.3. There was other monies prior to the obtaining of that 1.3. So I can't answer the question until I know what the build price is. But regardless of that, it's common sense to understand that the contribution from the rugby club, right from the get-go when this project was first determined, will be considerable. I don't know how else I could say that. But the actual number will be determined by ultimately what's the gap in between the funding that we have received or they received, plus they received through the federal government. What will the gap be? And I don't know what our answer is tonight. I don't.
Councillor Williams,
I don't understand how I can provide that answer when I'm currently running a tender process where we've gone through a process to go to market for expressions of interest, of which 5 companies were shortlisted, and they'll be asked to tender. And that's what they're being asked to do.
Councillor Williams, I might also add that the some of the grant monies that have been allocated, apart from the monies that have been allocated directly to council, are contributions via state or federal governments to the Huntersville Rugby Club, not to Huntersville Council. So their contribution is actually partially made up of fundraising monies and partially made up of funds that they sought and were awarded themselves, not awarded to council. Councillor Williams.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. A question. Isn't it reasonable that council know those costs before it enters into an agreement, on the basis that to defer it until you have that information? I'm not saying not do the licence, I'm saying defer it until we have all the information on the table and we can make a sound decision. At the moment, I acknowledge that they've contributed, but I need to know how much and then what are we leaving off the table?
Well, I think through you, Mr. Mayor, I think the key response to that is we've got an obligation to go on public exhibition. So that's the first step.
Councillor Bagara, you look like you're burning to make a question.
Desperate. I think you need to look at it this way: the consideration to council for the arrangement, i.e. the licence fee being the playing fields and lighting, is, and correct me if I'm wrong, through you, Mr. Mayor, General Manager, the consideration for that arrangement is that council is not contributing a cent. Is that right or not wrong?
To date, council has not contributed to
Well, that's the
monetarily to
consideration.
the.
Whatever
yeah.
contribution happens to be fall out on the numbers from the rugby committee, the community. The consideration for the position we take it in 4.1 is that council's contribution is nil.
Councillors, any more questions of the general manager? If not, any speakers for the motion, against the motion? Right of reply, councillor Vergara.
Sorry, are we doing it for?
No, we're considering your motion.
Oh,
It only becomes the motion if the proposed motion fails.
you could just put it.
I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. I'll now move to item 4.4, draft crime prevention strategy and action plan, page 117. Moved Councillor Williams, seconded Councillor Prieston. Councillor Williams.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this is a great document, something that the community really needs in its ability to understand what is happening in terms of crime in its local area and the steps needed to be done to minimise and enhance the welfare of our community. So I commend the staff, and I also thank the police for their input to this process. And we had the Deputy Commander here the other night talking to council about statistics and about what their command is doing in the local area. So I thank the local command for their contribution and their efforts in reducing crime and maintaining the safety of our community. And I think this document and strategy will go a long way to help enhance that.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Any other speakers on this item? If not, I'll put it. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Now, councillors, can I just see if we have any items that we can't move in a block? There's item 4.6, CAP, item 4.7, procurement policy, item 4.8, request for a fee waiver, 4.9, general purpose financial statements for year ending 30 June, 4.10, summary of council investments as at 31 August 2022, minutes of meeting Board of Risk and Improvement Committee held 17th of August, DA determined under delegated authority in August 22, development applications determined by DCU in August 22, report on legal matters, report on status of LEP DCP review, Parks and Leisure National Conference Program, minutes of Movement Transport Advisory Committee meeting held on 19th July, minutes of Hunter Silver Business and Acquisition Committee held 6th July. Is there any items that councils will wish to raise? Councillor Williams?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, you've gone through that at lightning speed. All I can pick up at this stage is 4.7. I'd like to ask a question.
4.7, yes.
And this, sorry.
And there was another, well, you asked, well, and 4.9.
4.7, 4.9. Councillor Sanderson?
Sorry.
I have a question regarding 4.16 Parks and Leisure Conference.
Yep. Okay, 4.7, 4.9. Councillor Quinn?
And in the minutes of the Movement and Transport Advisory Committee, there are quite a few recommendations. So if we adopt,
Okay.
we adopting all the
I'm with you.
recommendations.
I'm with you. All right. So,
I have a question as well.
Councillor
4.1.
Prieston, 4.12 DAs. All right, councillors, I might ask that we then move items 4.6, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 and 18, if you are happy. And then we will deal with those other items one at a time. So just again, for reference, we are moving items 4.6, 4.8, 4.10 through 15 and item 4.18.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Moved Councillor Quinn, seconded Councillor Vergara. All those in favour?
I asked to ask a question at 4.12.
Oh, okay. Yep. Sorry. Yep. I've made that amendment.
Pulling 4.12
1.2 out.
as a general swag.
Okay, councillors, happy with that? Proceed. Yes, all those in favour? Against? That is carried. I'll move to item 4.7, procurement and contract management policy. Councillor Williams, I believe you were
A
speaking to.
question, for the General Manager, Mr. Mayor. On page 166, it refers to the procurement lifestyle in local government. I think it's left off a couple of points that I'd be familiar with, and that's lessons learned, and most importantly is the transfer of the asset to the operational.
Take that as a comment, Councillor Williams, or?
Well, yeah, it's a comment in terms of it. It's something I think needs to be added to the process.
Okay, is there an amendment, or would you
Well,
like for
I'm
the?
happy to move the motion with the amendment that the life cycle reflect lessons learned and transferred to the asset register.
Is there a second to that effect? Councillor Sanderson.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, if I could ask the council officer, well, what's that do?
Yes, Councillor, sorry.
Your processes.
Okay,
Director of Finance
thank
Services.
you, through the chairman. No, I totally take on board, especially the first point, lessons learned. Yep, I completely. Yes, it's register one. I'm not entirely sure what the purpose of this document is. The intent was to consolidate a multitude of policies to make it easily readable for both suppliers and our council staff. So in terms of the asset register itself, we do have a separate capitalisation policy, which is quite technical. So my preference would be actually to keep that separate. But certainly the lessons learned, I totally take that on board.
So are you happy with that to be taken on board by the director, or would you like to
No, I'm
include it?
moving the recommendation with the addition of adding lessons learned.
Just pull that up in the meeting minutes in the agenda, sorry.
Yeah. In the procurement life cycle lessons learned.
Procurement
Push that
life
amendment policy
cycle
that you're
lessons
adopting.
learned.
Well, I'm going to talk to the staff as to how we put that in on the right policy for giving it time.
Excuse me, through you, Mr. Mayor. So
Mr. General
just for
Manager.
clarity, Councillor Williams, that's the wording that you're seeking?
Well, it would be point 2 of the recommendation. The recommendation would be point 1, and then 2 is the addition. So it's not an amendment.
Is there a seconder?
Well,
Councillor Sanderson.
yeah, but adding lessons learned. What
To the life cycle.
in the report? I mean, be clear about what you're adding it to. Is it just an issue to be considered by the director? Is it to be added to the policy? It's not clear. It's not a soundly worded amendment.
Well, it is now.
Councillor Williams, just to be clear, adding lessons learned to the procurement life cycle selection of the policy is your motion. Do you wish to speak to it? Ask the director.
Obviously going to get nowhere tonight, so it's
No.
Councillor
Mr. Mayor, if I could just suggest, it just goes in the recommendation that council adopt a procurement and contract management policy with the addition of lessons learned to the life cycle section of the policy. So it's
Councillor Williams, you have
point two.
yes, okay. That becomes the motion.
I was just conscious we're
Yes.
adopting the policy and
Yes,
then we're
yes,
amending it on
yes,
another
yes.
clause.
Happy with that, Councillor Williams?
Yes, Master.
Yes. Any speakers for or against? Right to reply. If not, put the motion. All those in favour? Against, that is carried. Item 4.9, general purpose financial statements for year ending 30 June 22.
I have a question, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Williams.
General Manager, bottom of page 187, it refers to the section headed report.
Page what, sorry?
187.
187.
To the final page.
Yep.
And it's just for clarification, but we talk about the embellishment works at Fig Tree Park as being 3.087. I thought the grant was for 4.75 million, not 3.1 million. I'm just wondering where that extra money was. It in last year's
Mr.
budget
General
or
Manager, or through to the Director?
Yeah, through the General Manager. So we've covered this off previously in a quarterly budget report, but essentially that grant is paid on 3 stages. The second stage being what was meant to be the construction phase, and that was meant to be recognised past financial year if the construction had occurred. Because of the changes in the accounting standards, that had to be moved as a recognised income over to liabilities in. So it's a portion of the grant for stage 2.
Balance is already there.
So we've had stage 1, this is 2, and then there's a final small payment at the end.
Councillors, any other questions? Have we got a mover? Moved, Councillor Williams, seconded Councillor Quinn. Any other discussion? If not, I'll put it. All those in favour? Against? That is carried unanimously. Move to item 4.12, development applications determined under delegated authority in August 2022. Councillor Prieston.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had a quick question. I just wanted to know what the conditions are on development application number 1264 0037 1308 and 1293. I know that
Sorry.
the reporting officer. Right, like is everything approved?
Yeah, they've been approved.
They've been determined.
We just received the report once they've been done. Yep.
I missed that. And then there's one that says recommendation, but that's already been communicated to the applicant, correct?
Everything that is in that report has been communicated to the applicant, I would imagine, by the time it gets to council.
Okay.
So these have been either approved or refused as per the report.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Councillor Williams, did you have a question?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, through you, the General Manager, on page 64, there seems to be, in its relation to removing the jacaranda at 3 Brook. The report talks about the tree being of good health, moderate landscape significance, and then the final dot point, a review of the application has considered the application's reason to be invalid. How have we gone and approved the removal of the tree if we think that the reasons are reasonable?
Well, through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Williams, I'll have to take your question on notice and come back to you about that, because obviously the acting director is absent this evening, and furthermore, I wasn't present at that DCU meeting, so I'm more than happy to get the information and come back to you. Thank you.
Councillors, do we have a mover for item 4.12? Move Councillor Preston, seconded. Councillor Quinn scratched his ear. Yep. Any other discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is carried unanimously. Move to item 4.16, the 2022 Parks and Leisure National Conference Program. Councillor Sanderson.
I'm perfectly happy with the recommendation. My own concern, I have raised before, is unfortunately we do have a resolution of council from the last term. I did look for it late this afternoon, but I couldn't. I was unable to find it. Sure. So I can't give a resolution number at this point in time. But that would have set limits on the expenditure for conference attendance, and I fear this one may exceed it. So I don't know whether we can be a bit funky, but perhaps we should be including an additional point in the recommendation that the resolution of Performance Council restricting expenditure on conference attendance be Well, remove, lost the recipient.
If it assists Councillor Sanderson, any resolution of this council would supersede that anyway, so we could pass this motion without.
We've got something here that policy's been set. I just believe we should simply remove that resolution while we're just all tied the whole slate up.
It was $1,000.
Yeah.
Per councillor per year.
How long ago are you talking, Councillor Williams?
It was Councillor Collins and yourself, Mr. Mayor, that
18,
moved it.
17, something like that.
It was, I don't know, 12 months ago.
Yeah,
It was longer than that.
It was while Councillor Williams was mayor, as I recall.
Yeah, well, I remember it as being, rather odd, but anyway, that's. what council-
Councillors, can we just, we're still in open council. Questions? That's it.
Well, that's a question.
Yes.
But I perhaps what I should do is try to add a point or amend, move and amend the resolution that we just the resolution of the former council limiting council's funding of conference fees.
Councillor, let's just
what's the appropriate word there?
rescinded,
Rescinded, yeah.
be rescinded.
Yeah, order-wise, yes, it should.
There's a second of that motion. Councillor Williams. Councillor Sanderson, you should speak to that motion.
No, I think we've got that right. I think everyone's in agreement that former resolution of former council be removed, and I'm happy with the rest of the.
Any speakers for, against?
I'll just say for, Mr. Mayor, if that was a resolution of the former council, I think that it's absolutely ridiculous that limit was put on it.
I agree.
I'll just pass that comment.
Councillor Sanderson, any right of reply?
No,
If that is the case, put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Item 4.17, minutes of Movement and Transport Advisory Committee meeting held on the 19th of July 2022. Councillor Quinn had a question, or there are a number of recommendations.
I'm just noting, Mr. Mayor, that there are quite a few recommendations in there, so I'm just wanting to clarify that if in adopting this report, we are indeed adopting all the recommendations, and there's some pretty substantial ones in there.
Is that so moved, Councillor Quinn?
What's that?
Is that so
Yes.
moved, Councillor Quinn, seconded.
So we're receiving, noting and adopting the recommendations.
Ask a question.
Councillor Prieston.
Who is Mark Lane?
Mark Lane he's a member of the committee.
Okay.
Yeah. Like there's a secretary and stuff.
He's very good.
Okay.
Councillors,
Can I show an amendment?
yes, Councillor Bagara.
We adopt the report and then ask council officer, the appropriate council officer, to report on the recommendations. What happened? I haven't actually been.
In perhaps in the formation of the because these readers' minutes, perhaps in the formation of these reports in the future, we can actually set these out as recommendations on the page of the resolution. But obviously Mohammed's here, so he can talk to any item that we want to bring up.
Yeah,
but would that assist?
Should address each of them and give us a view.
Are there any issues that you wanted addressed specifically, either to the chair of the committee or to the council staff?
on these ones.
Yes.
I don't want to pass these until,
Also, you're moving a motion to adopt the minutes, but not the recommendations
Yeah.
until they come back to
Yeah.
council. Okay. Is that,
There's a few of them that we do need to adopt.
yeah,
For example, the terms of reference, which we've actually, that's a biggie.
Mm.
So the terms of reference recommendation, which is 3.2. 3.1 has already been passed on to the local traffic committee and adopted as a result of this recommendation that took place last week.
Councillor Quinn, would you like to speak to the?
I can quickly run through them all if you wish.
That might assist.
So the first one there is regarding parking limits adjacent to Brady Park Public School. It came to the committee and then came back to council. It was sent, it went to the traffic committee, the statutory traffic committee, then came to council, and the advice was to send it to the movement and transport committee, and confirming that there was appropriate consultation. That since came back to the committee saying that there was, and everyone thought it was a great idea. So therefore it's recommended for adoption. That's now gone to the local traffic committee and it was adopted last week.
so does it need council?
No, well, I think it's already been
That's
through the process there, so that one's fine. So that we can endorse that one. The second one is the tour.
Yeah.
In terms of reference. So that had been previously tabled at a council meeting and it had to go to the committee for endorsement, then come back to council for endorsement. The third one was regarding parking issues around Mara's Sisters College, Woolwich, where students, more and more students are driving their cars to school, and it's just creating a lot of on-street parking issues. So the resolution is pretty simple, saying that council writes to the principal of the school, asking them to encourage students to use public transport or rideshare to minimise the number of vehicles that are parking on local streets. So it's pretty easy.
Should we add though also the environmental issue in terms of?
Well, that was the that can be in the fleshing up of the letter, but that was the reason, one of the reasons behind it, as well as the on-street parking issue.
And they're all young people. They
Yep,
should.
that's right. Sit on your bikes.
It's exacerbated at the moment by the loss.
That's right, it is.
There's no parking there.
Yep. The next one was a working party be formed to a discussion paper regarding a transport thing. That's already underway, so that doesn't need to. Oh, sorry, which one have I missed? I'll write into our local member, Mr. Roberts, regarding the ongoing issue of safety on the Huntersville overpass. So
It's been going for a long time.
someone
Mr.
bothered to go back to the
Quinn?
council minutes
Councillor
since
Quinn?
about 1999, we will see that this issue has never been resolved.
It was raised last year and the year before.
Yep. So again, we just keep banging the door.
Yeah.
So that's what that one's about. 3.5 is about starting to draw up a local master plan of public transport in the LGA. So there's a committee that's doing that.
Yep.
So this is basically just, saying look, the committee will form a working party. That doesn't need council resolution.
Yeah.
The next one is an exit plan strategy from Huntersville. I think this one's really important. That council has a documented emergency exit plan from the peninsula, basically. So, for example, if there was a major incident that blocked off Church Street, right near the traffic lights there, you've got the whole peninsula can't get out of the peninsula. So, what's the alternative strategy?
Yeah, that's just a recommend. It's not a recommendation to council. It's just an operation for the committee.
Yep. So the officers, Mohammed's already going to have something on that for the next meeting, and that's it.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Quinn. Is there a move? Councillor Quinn seconded. Councillor Preston. Councillor Begara, are you happy with those items?
Yeah. So the recommendation say the report be received and noted and the
recommendations adopted. I just think in the future what we might do is have those recommendations set out in page 1, just for absolute clarity. But that's fine. Those recommendations seem substantial, but operational. Councillors, any discussion? If not, okay.
I've just the staff member was seeking clarification as to
Yes, that's good. Yep, thank you. If not, I will put the motion. All those in favour? Against, that is carried. We have dealt with the minutes of the Levisne Friendship Committee. So we move to, we do have a confidential item, but there are two questions without notice. One from Councillor Sanderson, one from Councillor Quinn. General Manager.
Thank you.
With notice.
With notice.
With notice, sorry.
With notice, yes. So Councillor Sanderson, thanks for your question. So it's probably fair to say that this is a long running scenario. And can I say that I am slightly surprised that given your question back in 2021, the report wasn't brought back with an update, but it is what it is. One thing I do want to point out, so I think what we need to keep in mind here is that we're not just dealing in regards to consent and the fulfilling of those consent obligations. There's just not one DA. If you look at the history of this going back to 1999,
Yeah, I do have a bit of that history.
I can clearly see there was 10 occasions where modifications have come back, et cetera, et cetera. So the good news is that in the aftermath of your question back in April last year, the council officer said, we will write to the owner of the subject land expressing issues raised, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what I can confirm is that on the 23rd of April, 2021, council did in fact write to the owner and was very specific about raising and that we received concerns about car parking and other matters. That owner then replied back to council in May with a response to that letter. Post that in May as well, the former general manager received an email from a local resident stating issues potentially around breaches of liquor license, which obviously is not in our domain. In the aftermath of writing to the owner in the aftermath of your question in April, and then the response back, we then went back to that resident and also confirmed that we were looking into the matter and that she should refer the inquiry around alleged breaches of liquor license to the appropriate people. At the end of May, we actually wrote back to the owner again and said that we were giving them a notice of intention to give an order. And then in December, we actually issued a penalty infringement notice. So the follow-up from officers was very thorough. Objectively, I think they probably should have circled back and gave you an update on that. The other thing that I also would like to give you some context in as well, Councillor Sanderson, is that at the moment, council is going through a preliminary assessment of a new DA pertaining to change of use. Now, during the interaction with the applicant, we've made it very, very clear to them that they've got responsibilities under the previous DA and we are going to continue the aftermath of that correspondence and the penalty infringement notice to monitor that very, very, very closely. There's been a lot of assurances given by that applicant that they will adhere and continue to do their part to abide by that consent. But obviously I can't make any comment about the outcome of the current DA around the change of use because it hasn't been determined. Now, I'm more than happy if you want me to put that in your report post tonight, but I hope that gives you some comfort that in the context of going back in April 21, when you asked the question, the council was very thorough in following up your request.
I think it would be very useful for that to be in a report. Then residents will take some comfort from the fact that the council does appear to have handled the matter quite extremely well. So yes, a report would be useful, and so I think we get those things on the public record, so people are aware of what's going on.
Sure, happy to do that, Councillor. Councillor Sanderson, is that adequate for this evening?
That's adequate for this evening, but I presume we'll just produce a report on that in a later meeting.
Yep.
Great.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. There are two questions from Councillor Quinn in regards to the Rivergate Reserve. So, Councillor Quinn, the first question in regards to the amenities block. So the issue here is that there is a technical issue in regards to the solar panels. So on Monday, a technician came out and inspected that facility, so to speak. Despite their best attempts, there were still technical issues that essentially, in layperson's terms, is that the batteries are not charging adequately. That's the technical issue. And there is a possibility that the reason for that is it's not getting enough sun from the tree canopy. So that's something that we need to look at. So in a nutshell, two things. One, we're now waiting back for the advice from the technician and the suppliers of how do we best resolve that. And quite logically, there'll be probably some costs that will come back as part of that resolution. And secondly, as an interim measure, we've now placed 2 portaloos there to ensure that there is a facility there for residents.
Now, just so technically, it's because the power's not there. It's because it's a local circular system.
Yeah, so the batteries are not, in very simple terms, the battery's not charging adequately.
Yeah.
So we've actually put a generator in there to try and boost them,
Yeah.
but that's not a solution.
No. Fair enough.
So that's a technical issue that we
good to
need to
know.
resolve. Okay, with regards to the second one, and again, and I'm sorry I say this, and I'm very much looking forward to the day that when I can make comment on things that I was actually here for. So council engaged a contractor to service and clean that overgrown pond that you referred to. Now, in simple terms, and Mohammed, by all means, if you would like to chime in here, there was 2 parts to the contractor's cost. The first one was to actually do the work, and then the second part was to dispose of what they've excavated. And let's just say that the price to dispose of it was extremely high. So we made an operational decision that we would actually take it out ourselves. But the challenge there, of course, is twofold. The first one is access in regards to wet weather. And we've had a lot of that in the last few months. So consequently, when you try and go and get that, you're at grave risk of getting involved and causing significant damage to the ground. And secondly, is price. Because while the soil is incredibly wet, the price goes up in terms of what we get charged. So we've pragmatically just tried to wait, and we've now we do have a contractor on standby that when that soil is dried out, we will move it, but we won't move it all because we will use some of it in regards to some new mulch and plantings to remediate it back to its former look. And then finally, we're also in the final stages of completing an audit on all of our water quality devices. And once we've done that, that will then allow us to have a new look and a review of what the maintenance schedule is aligned to them. So I hope that answers your 2 questions, Councillor Quinn.
Okay. Yeah, well, I just on the second one. So the issue there, I get it. That's good to know about the disposal of that pile of stuff out of the pond. So is that area then going to be remediated? It was mowed lawn for years, and it got overgrown with strangler vines and all sorts of stuff because it wasn't maintained.
So according to the staff, the intent is to do some new mulching and some new planting.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to add to that, Mohammed, but that's the general intent of what we plan to do.
I'd be cautious about the new planting, because if they're going to grow that high, because all those people paid $1 million views. So the planting needs to be modest. Ground cover.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I was just going to add, Mr. Mayor, and the reality is we need to put on the maintenance schedule because same thing's happened with the bond. So
okay, no, that's great.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, would you like to add anything, Mohammed, to that?
Oh, very much covered everything. So once we do the auditing on the water quality devices, the plan is to put them on a regular maintenance, so we don't wait another 2 or 3 years to come in and clean and do a massive clean. So if we can do it on a more regular basis, it will be a lot easier and cost effective.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you.
Councillors, any other questions about that? Councillor Williams.
Yes, if I may, in the later follow-up question in relation to question 1. There's rumours in the community that the people that service that facility are coming from New Zealand. Is that correct?
That is my understanding. So
That was the
well, the device, the
construction.
technology
Yeah,
that
was using
went in there was some new whiz-bang product that was done out of a control room in Dunedin in New Zealand when the thing was installed about 8 years ago, where they monitored it. But from what I'm hearing, it's the whole problem is it can't be monitored because there's no power getting in there to run the whole thing. And it's a local circular system.
It would be useful to have it in the newsletter.
General Manager.
Yeah.
I'll get, we respect Mr Mayor that Muhammad is far, he's been on the technical side of this far better than I.
Yep, no, through you, Mr. Mayor. So we advise the officer to actually start looking at local suppliers and consultants to actually start monitoring that, or if we can change it to some other contractor. The main issue with the batteries is during COVID for the 2 years, the contractor wasn't actually able to come into site and sort of service and that's contributed to the failure of the batteries. So hopefully, with the inspection that took place on Monday, we get a price to how much it's going to cost us and find alternative local contractors to look into it.
So it's still a New Zealand contractor, is it?
At the moment, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Councillors, we happy with Riverglade? We have a confidential item in front of us, so I need a motion to go in committee of the whole. Move Councillor Quinn, seconded Councillor Williams. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Can I shut off the live stream?